Good evening. I would like to call the Union County Board of Education joint meeting with the County Board of County Commissioners to order.
I now call order the Board of Commissioners joint meeting with the school board.
And remember, commissioners, we don't have the fancy county, so you have to push on the button when you want to speak and then push it if you don't want us to hear what you're saying. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion passes. Okay. I would like to welcome our Mr. Chairman and the Board of County Commissioners to the Union County Board of Education Part 2 budget. Thank you so much for being here. This is our follow-on to our second meeting that we've had. And I just want to start out by saying thank you for the questions that you sent over beforehand. That was much appreciated. And one of the questions asked how much would it cost to fund a basic sound education? And I just thought it would be great if we could all open up to what the Leandro Court defines as a sound basic education. Providing students with each of the following abilities, skills, and areas of knowledge. 1, sufficient ability to read, write, and speak the English language, and a sufficient knowledge of fundamental mathematics and physical science to enable the student to function in a complex and rapidly changing society. Number 2, sufficient fundamental knowledge of geography, history, and basic economic and political systems to enable the student to make informed choices with regard to issues that affect the student personally or affect the student's community, state, and nation. 3, sufficient academic and vocational skills to enable the student to successfully engage in post-secondary education or vocational training. And 4, sufficient academic and vocational skills to enable the student to compete on an equal basis with others in further formal education or gainful employment in a contemporary society. So while we aim with Union County Public Schools to provide a basic sound education, our hope is to strive further and to continue the level of excellence in which we find ourselves, which attracts homeowners and businesses alike to our wonderful county. So I just thought that would be a good segue to open. And Chairman Rasheen, is there anything you'd like to say before we get started?
No, thank you. Well, other than thank you for inviting us, having us here. Thank you for the meal you provided. We look forward to continuing these dialogues as time goes on. I really do believe, I was really encouraged by the last meeting that we had. I think that the other Board of Commissioners members appreciate that as well and look forward to meeting with you more in the future. You don't realize how important it is for you to educate us as to what you do. I apologize again to Leslie. The other night we kept her till about 11 o'clock, I think, and we had a long meeting, but she got to see some of what we have to go through. And these jobs are tough. And if they were easy, then, nobody would ever give us a hard time, but they do. And just as you get your critics, we have our critics. And hopefully by educating each other, we'll slow our critics down. And we'll make sure that everybody understands why we're making the decisions that we're making. Thank you for having us again.
Okay, thank you. And I guess we'll begin.
May I add a comment, if I may? In following the local media this past weekend, I noted the proposed legislation to call for a moratorium on any other lawsuit as long as setting some guidelines for discussion. And I would just like to say, I can only speak for myself, but I have not and do not harbor any intentions of, in my mind, wasting the taxpayers' money on legal action. I think we're all responsible adults here. While we may not agree on everything, I think we will come, and we owe it to the people of Union County to come to some kind of agreement on a budget moving forward. And knowing the commissioners as I do, I believe them to be honest men with integrity, and I think they truly do want to do what's right. And I know we do on our board. And so I just like to open things on a positive note that I think we can work together. I think we should continue these discussions. I know we have another one planned for July. And I am very hopeful we will have a positive resolution. And I'm looking forward to working in any way possible I can to help make that come about.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sides. Mr. Karpinski?
Thank you, Ms. Boyd, Chairman Rushing. Thank you very much for the opportunity to meet again, and thank you very much for all the questions. There were a lot of questions, and we're going to try to address them. Some of them were duplicates, some were already answered at the meeting, but I think we have a presentation that is going to answer most of the questions. May miss some, so we want to make sure you have an opportunity to do so. As you know, we had this slide up before. The only change is the underline. All students to succeed. And I'll go through. So, of course, do the citizens of Union County want their school system to continue to improve? If so, there's an ad here. Last time you saw it, it said adequate funding and support are essential. Well, now we're getting to the local part of it. The local part of it is just a piece of the total part of our current expense budget, and it is becoming more and more important as state funding actually will be decreasing in some aspects as well. Okay. What I'd like to do, if we could, after I present what I'm going to present about any of these slides, I'd like to give the Board of Education an opportunity to chime in if they'd like to. And then after that, I'd like to go slide by slide and answer any questions that the commissioners may have as well, or staff. This is a slide that's difficult to read. Well, I can see it here, but I'm pretty close to it. But essentially, the question that we dealt with was, and I hope we explained it well enough last Monday night, we said that these school systems are top performing school systems in the state of North Carolina. And essentially, we didn't care about how much they spent on a per pupil basis. In fact, when I went to Ms. White, I said, I don't care about how much they spend. I don't care about anything monetary. I just care about what are some of the better school systems that are in North Carolina. That's how this data was generated. Okay, so then all I did was add the per pupil expenses, state, local, federal, and that's what happened. One of the questions last week was, well, is the amount of money per pupil spent an indication of success? Very difficult, very, very difficult to answer. However, you know, I'm a numbers guy, so I'm going out there. How the heck am I going to prove that this makes a difference? Money makes a difference. Well, essentially, it happens to be that the SAT average is 1579 for those 5 schools, and Union County's happens to be 1533. Now, when you're applying for college, that 40 to 50 points makes a difference. So, you know, it's very difficult to say, because there are some school systems that spend a ton of money and are not very good, quite frankly. But we're not competing with them. We're competing with the high flyers, and we're competing internationally. We're competing with all states. It's a matter of really doing our best to have all students succeed. You know, with that said, if board of Education members have anything to say about that, I'll give them the opportunity. Then the commissioners can ask questions. What we want to do is make sure when it's all said and done, you understand. And there was a lot of other questions, and if I'm going to answer it later, I'll tell you I'm going to answer it later. But that's what the data shows, and the average SAT score is 1579. Any comments or questions? Another question that kind of relates to this slide is, well, let's isolate just local money. You can't do that. The money is so intermingled that you can't just separate the dollars. We go hand in hand. State money, local money, federal money is all in our current expense bucket, and they need to tie in together. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just curious, what's the difference in the size of these two districts between the counties?
Don't even know.
Or you don't know? I believe they're small. Aren't they? Not a lot small. Pardon? A lot small.
Why wasn't Mecklenburg County included in that?
Because they're not as high of a flyer as the ones on the chart.
But aren't we competing with teachers for Mecklenburg County as well?
See, that doesn't matter. What we've determined is we're losing those teachers because of money. And no matter how well they're performing, matters not to us. We're just losing those people.
A teacher, this is obviously showing top school districts, but to Dan's point, a teacher will go to Charlotte Meck or to a school district that's not performing as well as ours if the money talks. And that's what I believe, Dan, you're saying, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you have Dare County.
Pretty sure that would, oh, I'm sorry about that. In Dare County and in counties out in the Outer Banks, my brother-in-law actually does construction, was a project manager for a system where at Kitty Hawk, they built apartments for teachers because it was so hard for them to find places to rent. And that was a partnership between the Board of County Commissioners, the school system, the local credit unions, and everybody came together to do something good for the teachers. And I think there's desire definitely from the Board of County Commissioners to help our teachers in any way we can and be creative. One of the things that maybe we've neglected to do, it's been so many years of political, our point, your point. If we start looking at those types of things and coming together and finding ways that we can collaborate on things that make sense for everybody, for the taxpayer, for the children, for the teachers, the county will be better off. And the legislation was mentioned that was filed last week. And in discussing that, one of the most important things in that legislation is the requirement that we talk. If we meet regularly and talk and have a meaningful discussion, I think that we can improve the school system. I think we can improve the county. It'll make people feel better about sending their kids to school. We have a lot of challenges facing us. We have challenges, you have challenges, and working together, we can meet our goals. What I see here is that we've been very successful, and we've been able to do it. I look at Polk County and imagine that like the state dollar is going to Polk County at 7,000. That's quite a bit of money because it's probably a small county, and they just don't have the efficiencies of scale that we have. We have a larger scale. Again, that teacher teaching 15 kids versus a teacher teaching 20 kids, you're going to have improvements there. And I think that's what this slide shows me. I may be wrong, but Chapel Hill, Carrboro City, that's a pretty good size system, isn't it? Is it?
Like I said, I don't know. It wasn't part of the analysis.
Small? Oh, so it's not the whole, it's just the city. I got you. Okay. I got you.
Okay. And there are school systems that do well. It's really difficult because one of the things that came up was, well, the graduation rate at that school system was 88%. Well, so was ours back then. I think a lot of school systems have made progress with the graduation rates. When you go out there, you have to really look at data and your data mining. And I just threw out SATs for just one piece of data, but there's a lot of ways to determine whether school systems are successful. And some of it you can't even put on a piece of paper why they're successful. I think one of the reasons we've been successful is we've been giving our principals, our schools, flexibility. Essentially, we give them central allotments and we say, here, you know best how to manage your school. So flexibility is key to any plan in making something successful. What works in one school does not work in another school. So there's a lot of factors that build into why these school systems might be successful. We're just happen to be one of them, but there are other successful school systems. But the benchmark to compare to others is a difficult find out there with all the data. Okay. Getting back into this 2016, 2017, same slide, nothing changed. Essentially, it shows the percentages that you all just saw. But one of the questions that was asked, fund balance restricted, 3.6 million. What is that? So I will go into that. 3.6 million not intended for the general K-12 student population. That amount is actually in our Fund 8, which is for non-general K-12 student population, and it's restricted primarily for special population programs, NC Pre-K program, which is children under the age of 5, and the UCPS is a fiscal agent for Southwest Education Alliance. So those dollars are, in the last case, not even they're a flow through to the Southwest Education Alliance. NC Pre-K program is by far the biggest program in Fund 8. And then, of course, you have your special populations. That could be EC children or others that have special needs. So that is the 3.6 million, and that's what it's restricted for. And there are other items, but those are the primary uses of that money. Any questions for the Board of Commissioners? Okay, then.
How do you accumulate the fund now? Oh, okay. My apologies. There was two parts to that question. The second part, where did the fund balance accumulate from in that 3.6 million restricted fund balance?
Essentially, it's from previous year's operations, and some of these programs have items that transpired during the summer. So that's why some of it occurs. Fiscal agent for Southwest, we're just that. We have the money in our records. It's a flow through, pass through. So it depends on how fast they spend it. Of course, once again, we have to take the money we get from EC and special population funds, from state money and federal money. We really don't put any money into, we don't take any local money and use it for NC Pre-K for sure. Special population services, very limited on the local budget. So you're almost replacing the Fund 8 dollars with possibly local dollars in the past, but these programs don't have Fund 2 dollars going into them for the most part.
So it came from the state.
So it comes from the state. NC Pre-K money is state. The Southwest Education Alliance money comes from other LEAs that get together to plan together. And then special population programs, we get it from Medicaid, Medicare reimbursements. So that's a state reimbursement type scenario and restricted for that use. Any other questions, comments? Okay, we talked about the revenues, and then we have, of course, the expenditures. And this, I think the main point here again is you can't just take local money out of this. You see 76, almost 77% goes into instructional programs, charter school payments, nearly 2%, non-program charges. That's some of the carryover that happens in the federal programs. Community services, obviously just a slight slice of the pie, and supporting services are your utilities, maintenance, transportation, and things of that nature. It's a huge operation happening daily to get kids to school, making sure they're safe on our campuses, making sure those buildings are maintained properly. And you can't just say, well, let's pull that 107 million out of that 360 million and think about it in a vacuum. Won't happen. We use those funds as they flow together in every environment when you talk about current expense. Comments, other questions? Okay, one of the questions revolve around this statement that was in our executive summary. Union County Public Schools is continually prioritizing student needs, making transfers and adjustments, trying to find funds for new and expanded initiatives from savings in other areas while making the most efficient use of tax dollars. We do this constantly. I'll have companies come in and review, making sure that we're not making duplicate payments in our invoices. Just this past year, we had somebody look at nearly $9 million or thereabout of utility bills. They found $27,000. Oh, of course, we split it with them, so be it. But we have others come in and look at what we're doing to make sure the company's not billing us too much. We're constantly making sure that our operations are sound. So trying is the key word. We've squeezed the quarter really hard, and we know the saying of that. And we've just went to the task of making sure we've been using the most efficient use of our taxpayer dollars, buying in bulk. Buying in bulk over the years has saved us tons of money. But once you've realized those savings, they're ingrained in what you do. And there's no more to be had. You've squeezed every dime, every penny. You've looked at everything. Yes, we're efficient in that way. No question about it. But all the efficiencies that we could gain in the future aren't going to amount to too much on the operations side of the house. And it's certainly not going to work on new and expanded programs or initiatives. But what we'll do is we'll look at programs and say, is that program doing well? Is that program worth continuing? Is something new or innovative that maybe we should not spend the money there and do something differently? Dr. Jones and his staff are constantly looking at the best teaching techniques, the best staff development techniques, always looking, and that's when you'll see sometimes new initiatives, but you reduce or get rid of an old initiative. So that's what we're talking about, always looking at what we're doing. Why do we do it? Is it effective? Comments? Questions?
I think one, and going through the seminar where they showed us what you have to go through and about moving money and how it's done within the school system, it shocked me again how much you can move. And I've had conversations, I think, with you, Dan, and others that explain that just like positions, how do you pay for positions and how do you fund positions, and trying to maximize that local dollar to go where it's needed, not to just the highest paid positions, or actually working with the state to do that. But, just the reality of it is, and this is something that we've all talked about or thought about, just like the computers, the one-to-one initiative. I think maybe in 2009, it was presented to the board, and the board didn't go with it at that time. And then year after year, it was implemented. with, I don't think there was any request. I may be wrong. Am I wrong about that? Were there any requests for the one-to-one initiative in the budget?
No, sir. Of course, the governor and the state legislator implemented the rules to get up to speed with digital learning. So they chipped in some. You all saw the charts that I sent you in the email, I believe, week and a half ago now, Friday. Matter of taking a look at what the state's funding. We don't know what the state's going to fund next year for technology, let alone 5 years from now. So planning 5 years out in our world is very difficult when you have no clue what you're going to get next year, let alone what you're going to get 5 years from now.
And I think that's the frustration from, at least for me, would be that, not knowing what's coming, not knowing what the future holds. We hear rumors, but there's really no discussion with our boards that, we're going to have to find the dollars too. To fund some of this. And, where I look at that, and I believe that, that's great that those kids are being able to use the computers, learn to use the computers. My daughter did a presentation. My wife was very impressed with it in elementary school. I understand the value. There are challenges. Internet. We've asked our staff to look into grants for rural internet and broadband availability, because we have many students on our side of the county that don't have access to wireless or don't have access to any internet. How are they to compete with their classmates that do? So that's an important challenge and that's an expense that we may have to incur. And hopefully we can find the money to do that. But we need to be discussing those things and seeing how we can help on our side. And we need to know how much you're spending and doing, allowing the kids maybe to use their own technology to save money for the taxpayers. There's several kids that have computers and could use them. There's some that don't. And if we need to provide the ones for the ones that don't, that's important. But at the same time, do we have to overspend? And the fact that the Board of Commissioners wasn't included really since, I guess, 2009 on that is a sore spot maybe.
And if we needed the help for that, we would have asked for that. And we may need to look at needing help in the future. If you looked at the graph that was sent to y'all, we got a spike coming up. You have to replace these units eventually. So you either have to do it the old-fashioned way and save for it somehow, or you got to hope that the state's going to come to task with the money. But when it comes down to it, other things might take prioritization or priority in the budget, and all of a sudden we won't have enough to do that next refresh. So there'll be an opportunity potentially, but at the time, given the state funding and the local funding of reprioritizing, we were able to afford it without asking the county for money.
And if I can jump in real quickly, first off, bring your own device. There's hits and misses on bringing your own device. I've worked in corporations where they allow that for your cell phone, but of course never for your computer because of security, because of customizations that they're making to software, because of just consistency across the learning environment to ensure that everyone's able to access. If you're using a Mac versus a Chromebook versus a Windows machine, what are you having to do to ensure anything you're downloading works on all of those? So there's a consistency basis there. If I'm correct, and you're right, this is going back prior boards before, a lot of us were on the board. I believe UCPS did come and ask originally for the funds. Am I correct? And then we originally asked for a partnership.
We
on the
did,
one-to-one.
and I recall the amount being something like
But then you're right.
700,000.
Nobody, since then, we just, found it where we could, scrape it
And I
together.
appreciate what you're saying, but at the same time, how many systems are, first of all, we're a leader in this. Disagree? We're a leader in this. So we're ahead of everybody else, just about, but there are some. Are there any other systems considering using their own devices or doing that right now?
Well, there might also be, and Ms. Morris and Dr. Jones, please correct me if I'm wrong, but when we purchase textbooks to go on our students' computer, I don't know if there's going to be any type of liability or copyright infringements that would come up on it if it was personally owned versus owned by the UCPS. And so I think that would be an issue with that.
Are we?
I think the premise is, I think what you're getting is that we need to come together and be collaborative and figure out ways. I don't think this necessarily this meeting is to find all those ways. I think what you're saying is we need to come together make sure that we include anything that we need in our budget. 2009 is in the past, we're 2016.
And-
Whatever we need, we will come to you, and then we'll also work and collaborate on ways to be efficient.
Because we see, what I see is that there was some discussion of operational budgets being used to offset some of the cost. But yet with that operational budget, what are we not funding? What are we missing? What are we, do we have to come back and do it later on? Because we have to look at that with fire departments. We have to look at that with other county departments. If we're not funding it now, the bill's going to come due sooner or later. So, how do we do it to be the most effective in cost for the taxpayers? How do we do it, like you're saying, with digital textbooks? And I didn't know that we were purchasing. I've heard different stories that we're not purchasing digital text. I've heard we're purchasing digital text. As a parent, excuse me for one second, take off the commissioner hat, put the parent hat on. Common Core math, I don't get it. I don't understand it. And I can't help my daughter do it. And I wish I could, but it's hard. I mean, you don't have a book, you don't have anything to go by. And so it's hard for me as a parent to work with my kids on their homework. So there's a lot of challenges just, and beyond this. And then with the computers, I've heard parents say, well, my son didn't have a computer for 1 or 2 months. They had to do without. I mean, I've heard many stories of that, not just 1 or 2. There was a problem with getting parts. And these are, listen, we have our issues and problems too. We understand those. We understand the challenges. But as being a partner in that, and as being somebody who understands why things are being done, that's going to help us and future boards of commissioners realize the challenges you're facing. So when we come into these budget times, we've already done this. We understand that when we get past it. But the fact that the operational money was taken and from each school, I'm wondering what we're missing. I'm wondering what other opportunities we had to use that money for.
Well, we engaged our principal. We said we have to take on this big challenge. The state's only going to help so much. So we talked to our principals and said, is this worth diving into? We then took some of their instructional material and supply money to make it go towards this effort. So when we fund them, we give them central allotments, they were willing to give up dollars to make this happen. And I'm glad you reminded me about the asks that we did. We asked for, I believe, 700,000 and change, and you all said no. So that was the beginning of the process that, okay, well, if the county commissioners aren't going to fund it and the state's mandating this, then we have to move forward and do it on our own and look for ways to save money to make it happen.
And I would say this board did not say no, right?
No, and that's
Past
true,
boards,
but at the time,
no, that's important.
that is
to note.
important.
And, one thing I just want to kind of mention is it was instructional to instructional from an operating standpoint. The principals have instructional money from a central allotment to do instructional items, and they were all in agreement that they were going to take some of their instructional allotment across the 53 schools. It probably wasn't 53 at the time, maybe it's a couple less, but anyway, was it 53 and 09? Okay. And put that towards, the one-to-one digital initiative. So it had buy-in at the school level, so they could, so we were giving up something, but we were getting a lot more in return. So that it became a decision, what we want to do. And the schools decided they also wanted to do the digital one-to-one, especially given the mandates from the General Assembly, the unfunded mandates to do testing and do digital learning.
Can I provide an example of an unfunded mandate? So we were told early on, by 2016, 2017, that all testing would be online. So of course, that's been revised some, that they have developed their systems. But early on in the game, that was one of the benchmarks that was set. That's just an example, one of the mandates.
And even this year, I believe Thursday of this week, 8th graders will be taking an online science EOG. Is that correct? Is it Thursday?
Right, and in 16, 17, every test began in 6th grade. It's online.
So what's the total cost for this initiative? I mean, I know since 2009, the numbers I've seen are $38 million that have been moved from the schools to the one-to-one initiative. What addition, and that's for laptops, what additional expenditures are out there? Are there technicians in there, additional software? So what's the all-in cost? And
Well,
I think to the Chairman Rushing's comment, how many students, what percentage of students have full version online texts on their computers, and teachers as well? Is it 100%?
We don't have 100% online text for everything. We're replenishing as we can. So for example, with the money that was allocated this year for textbook funds, we went and said, where were the current needs? So when we first went to high school, there was a need for replenishing biology texts. We were able to purchase classroom sets as well as online access and do it for the next 10 years. We then have gone to middle school. We've heard that mathematics is a need there. We invested some last year with mathematics in elementary. Now we're looking at the elementary area regarding what funds are left to be able to do that. So we're adding as we go. But since 2008, the state has not done a replenishment of textbooks by a subject per student. That changed. The funding has increased. We went several years that we did not have the funding, and we would purchase class sets or do what we could. But now you're able to do more with online because a lot of the textbook vendors have that.
But after $38 million in expenditures for laptops, what percentage of the students and what percent of the teachers have full online version of their texts or paper textbooks that are current that they can use? Because if the money's been shifted, don't they have a resource or they need that resource to teach? That's what I'm trying to understand. All that money's been spent. Do they have what they need?
Well, and again, what used to be at one time the expense with the unit and the curriculum or the software that you purchased was not as expensive. What we're seeing now is you're finding the device is lowering the cost, but the cost for access to the information is what the biggest charge is. So for example, with our special, with our funding that we have with DSSF and High Priority, we purchased about $900,000 in access for online repositories, video streaming, resources that teachers can use and build their learning management platforms. So we're trying to provide those resources that they can pull and they can teach. And then also, if we can purchase textbooks and digital access, we use digital textbook funds for that. But that's about $900,000 that we use out of funds to purchase access for those resources.
But what percentage of teachers have full text and students?
Well, they all either have access. When we purchase digital text, we purchase it for every teacher to have access. We don't have a school where we say, sorry, this school does not have access. But as we replenish, we purchase it for all. But it's a gradual process that we're replenishing because the state has not kept a replenishment.
So
But
not
what
100%, not 100%, but I would say, and stop me if I'm wrong, 100% of our students, teachers have the curriculum that they need to teach the classes.
Correct. Not every class has a text that's been adapted for that program. But where a text has been adapted, be it electronic version or a textbook, that's available to every teacher and every student. It depends on what the curriculum requires and what the class requires, whether there's a text, whether there's online materials, how the curriculum is based. Am I correct in that, Dr. Jones?
But again, I go back to my question. They had the curriculum, but they had textbooks before that they could access offline. The curriculum that you have online, if the system goes down and their network is down, do they have access to those?
Absolutely. I mean, there seems to be an assumption that before we had computers that everybody had a classroom text. No, there was never a time when courses only had text or all courses had text. There was always a variety of materials that teachers used, whether they were pre-computer or post-computer. And so they still have access to what they need to teach. If the internet is down, et cetera, we have backup plans for them to provide instruction. There's not a day wasted because the computer's down.
But if they don't have the tools from a textbook standpoint, are we even back to the level that we were before you implemented the one-to-one initiative for them having the textbook or the resources that are available? And some of the curriculum that I've been told from teachers, it's freeware. It's stuff that they find online that some of it's good, some of it's not good. It's not consistent across teachers. I mean, that's the concern that I'm getting from teachers. That it is not consistent. And because there is not that consistency, you're getting these different levels of instruction, not just from the teacher's experience, but just from access to the information and the materials.
Well, we provide curriculum specialists provide the maps and the resources for the instruction. They design the units. They design the resources that go with the objectives, because now we have to teach by objective, of course. So we have the objectives that we instruct, but with those resources that we purchase, we may have a repository, like a Curio at the high school is a repository which teachers can pull specifically resources, and some of that may access free, but it actually goes in and designs the lesson and provides the resources. But our specialists actually with the learning management system give them the lessons and the resources. And we talk with teachers. Those have been written by several of our teachers, and we gain feedback on how we can change. Just constantly scrubbing the materials. And you're exactly right. If there's a resource we see that's out there that's used, that's not, that we're hearing teachers that's not appropriate, or they feel it's not effective, many times we'll pull that out of the repository, but we have specialists that work to support teachers with that. You asked about, are we at the point we were before? In middle school, our science adoption, the last time we did a science adoption in middle school was around 2002, 2003. The state provided a book for every child. Well, now what we have, since that book is actually still around and we haven't had a one-to-one, but what we do is we have the framework, and then we use discovery education that has streaming videos and lessons and assessments that teachers can use and go with that. Also, when we talk with vendors now, we say, what happens if the internet does go down, or a student goes home and doesn't have the internet access like you spoke about? How is it that we can look at, are there copies that can be downloaded or access that the lesson can go in? And that's discussion that we do have with those vendors.
So how many of those curriculum specialists are in UCPS right now? And is that a new position as part of the one-to-one?
No, sir. No, sir. And we haven't grown in that area. As a matter of fact, when we made cuts years back, we didn't add to that area. We actually made cuts. So in the high school area, for all of our teachers, we have an ELA that works with language arts. We have a mathematics at the high school. We have a science that works with content. Remember, these are folks that are responsible for supporting teachers with understanding content. If I have a new biology teacher that's struggling, we want to make sure there's somebody to help. So they work with content, but we cut a social studies position to keep teachers in the classroom. So that social studies covers grades 6 through 12. At the middle school, we have a mathematics, we have a language arts, we have a science, and again, social studies shares. At the elementary level, where you're working with lots of level text and different objectives, those students, those teachers may have one for every 2 to 3 schools. And they're going in and planning, working with teachers, showing them the resources, helping them plan and develop lessons. At one time, it was about curriculum and instruction, and then assessment came in. But really, in 21st century now, it's also how we organize the resources, because teachers are teaching and pulling lots of different resources.
So if we focus on the high school, let's go back to all the laptops are there. I assume every student now at the start of the year in the 15-16 school year, all of them in high school had laptops?
Yes, sir.
Did every student in UCPS have a laptop that was supposed to have one?
Every student in UCPS should have been assigned a laptop, yes or no. I can't answer. I don't work specifically in the area regarding if there were laptops that had problems with difficulty or parts or what, but the allocation was, that's considered a source as a textbook. I mean, a device that they should be able to use to access resources.
Okay, so we'll stay with the high school.
Okay.
Does every high school student and teacher have the text that they need, or the online text that they've had before? Are they at the same level from a text standpoint, same percentage adoption that they had before the one-to-one?
At the high school level, yes, first of all, if digital is available. And again, we're replenishing that as we went. So last year, there was a revision in American history 1 and 2. We purchased the classroom sets that were available. Digital text also came, a digital copy came with that. When we did the revision in mathematics, instead of doing, and the state changed from algebra to geometry to algebra 2, where you have math 1, math 2, math 3. We took what funds were available and we purchased classroom sets, but there was also digital access that students had that were available, as well as resources, because teachers said they wanted to have access to the ancillary materials as well.
And those are full versions?
Full versions, yes, sir.
And so I'll ask the same question for the middle school. Every student and every teacher have the text that they need, or the online text that they had prior to the one-to-one?
Every teacher prior to the one-to-one, they don't have every refurbished text. Some of them are using the older resources because the state didn't provide. But we went to this year and said, what was the need? And they're saying mathematics. So we're making purchases of a textbook now in mathematics. And there is, by the way, a text that they have, we purchased a few years back, and teachers, 96% of them wanted that. They've said, with changing standards, we need something that's better. So we are right now vetting the books, and we will be purchasing a math book for the students. They'll also have a digital copy because that comes with it now. In science and social studies, those will be the next ones that we add for all students. They have access, though, to the resources that come with the lessons, like I talked about discovery education. Or in social studies, they use DBQs, which are writing and resources that we have that can supplement and support the lessons. So, and there are older texts that we still have. Now, there are some teachers that say, I don't need the older text now. I don't need, but the bottom line is they have to support the student with resources.
But the middle school would be where that cutoff is, where we're not quite to where we were.
We are stronger in high school. And, high school, of course, sir, has the more specialized content. You're going to need, when you're going into biology in high school, you really need that strong text. Middle school, we're getting there. Elementary, since the early 90s, we moved away from an anthology and we're working with individual level text where you're growing students on an ongoing basis. Math is where we're working. We did purchase some math materials and resources last year, and math is the area that we're looking. So we're moving to elementary. And again, we had more money in textbooks this year, so that's what we're doing. And we heard from parents and from teachers that they would like more text.
So if I remember correctly, the laptops were rolled out to the high school, then they were rolled out to the middle school, and then the elementary.
Actually rolled out to middle school first.
Middle school first?
We started with a pilot in 6th grade at 4 schools, and we started a pilot with high school, but we moved it with middle school first, 6, then 7, 8, then high school, and now to elementary, 3, 5, and then my understanding, Dr. Webb, K2 would be the next. Am I correct in that?
At this point in time, the Tech Council does not want to move to a K2 as a one-to-one, and at the elementary, the 3 through 5 remains at the school. It's not a take-home device.
So I guess my question then would be, if we start at the middle school, why don't they have the full versions? Why aren't they fully set up with the curriculum and the text, the online access that they need? If that's where they started, why?
They are. The middle school is set up with online accesses to resources. They're set up with the curriculum that teachers may have used in what they call their learning management system. It used to be Moodle, it's now Canvas. Teachers have built lessons and they have resources and pulling in. What they don't have is the traditional textbook for every subject. We're trying to replenish those textbooks. They do have the curriculum, they do have the resources, and our students have been scoring fairly well in those areas using those resources. But we're constantly talking with teachers. Another example is there's a program called Compass that we use, and it's diagnostic prescriptive that will take students reading and their subjects and really work with where they are to try to grow them, and has assessments. That is what middle school teachers, they said, wanted to add to the curriculum, but it's not a traditional textbook.
But we're 7 years into this.
Yes, sir.
And they still don't have everything that they need, correct?
They have everything they need to teach. They do.
Well, you just said they don't have the textbooks that
They don't have the traditional textbook. There's not a traditional science book for every child, a traditional social studies book for every child, a traditional math, and a traditional language arts the way that it was. We haven't been funded. The state no longer supplies that for every student. Where back years ago, they used to say, this is the year that we're going to replenish every math book for a middle school student. And the state had it on a rotating basis. They no longer do that. They have the resources and the materials to teach the lessons and for the students to be engaged. And they're using that with their digital resources.
If I can interrupt 1 second, and let me ask a question, because I think it's to what you're saying. And I have teachers, as you can tell, we have teachers that talk to us. They're our constituents too, and they come to us and they share concerns with us. And one concern that I've heard is the copyright laws. They're very concerned that they're taking things off the internet. They're taking things outside of the system and developing their class, which, it's wonderful if it's good material, but they're concerned that if they're ever sued over copyright infringement, the feeling they get from the system seems to be that this is the law, apply it. And they don't know if they're going to be backed up if they do get in some kind of trouble. And I hope that y'all would make a policy of that if anything would happen where a teacher got in trouble for copyright infringement, that you would provide, that you would stand behind them. You know,
We
Dr.
actually
Jones,
did copyright training last year. Ms. Morris and her team, we educated all principals. We created modules that teachers participate in to understand what copyright is. It certainly is a concern of ours. When we purchase the licenses, that covers, it's like anything else. Teachers can grab anything, but when I was teaching without a computer back in the day, I could have gone and grabbed a workbook from somewhere that I may not have had the license. That ongoing education is important. We have been educating teachers, and what we do provide and give for them is under license.
And that's my question, Dr. Jones, just to clarify. The teachers are not having to go out and get things unless they choose to. They're provided everything within UCPS to teach that curriculum. Now, if they've chosen to go out and find something of their own, that's what they're doing.
Some do, yes.
But they wouldn't have to. They could just take what we have and teach to the curriculum that we're teaching.
Right. Well, there are lots of free resources that are out there, and we spend time working with teachers on how to vet resources. For example, we had a teacher that may pull a resource in history, but the organization that may have created that resource, if they're not careful, could actually be working against the fundamentals of what we want our students, or working against the curriculum and instruction. So we work with teachers on how to scrub and vet their lessons. But there are some, if they want to go out and pull worksheets offline, a parent can do that at home as well. And the lessons have the resources that are embedded, that if they select, it will accompany and provide the student with the instruction. But there are some teachers that they like some of the traditional methods, or they like some, when I say traditional, they may want to go out and have a book that has worksheets, and they may access and pull that. We try to work and guide teachers through that process, because it's about high order learning. Yes.
Ask a question, please. You keep referring to online.
Yes.
Is this able to download to the device so they can work offline? I got a presentation by DPI on the amount of people in North Carolina that don't have access to the internet. And the county, as the chairman said, there's a large part of our county that falls into that as well. So my question is if you got a student going home, can they have that material on their Chromebook that allows them to study even though they don't have access, or is that
the teachers work with the students on that. Not every resource that we have may have an offline component. When we talk and we look for those, we ask for that. And vendors are getting better with that because their technology is developing as well. For example, when I talked with Discovery Education the other day, they actually said the lessons could be downloaded, and the student can take that home. Because students have a learning management access, what we call Canvas, many of the teachers can download those materials and the student takes it home, and they don't have to have that access online.
But that's not available for everything.
And then
Well,
they print, and then they have available, they will print things with those worksheets.
Yes, and teachers will work with students. If they don't have the access, it is not a penalty. They are not penalized because they do not have. But more resources we want to be able to download that a student, when he or she goes home, can have the document that's on there to work with.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just, I'm putting my mother hat on, having two Union County students. But each teacher is encouraged, I'm not sure if every teacher does this, but each teacher is encouraged to have their classroom, what was called their Moodle site. So my son would go to Miss Smith's social studies Moodle site. And on her site, she would have that social studies textbook. So the memory would not take up my child's laptop. He would just go to her Moodle site and pull up the textbook and go to chapter 3 or whatever his assignment was, answer the questions on his laptop, and just upload it right there for her to grade.
And if his internet was down?
And so I guess that would be the challenge, if you have internet access or not.
If there is internet access, the teachers modify. teacher's not a nice student will not be penalized because they do not have that access.
But it's a really great, as a parent, it's wonderful because they can't come home and say, well, I lost my worksheet on the bus, or the dog ate my homework, or, because it's right there on that teacher's website. So if they printed off a copy for you, great, but it's not absolutely necessary if the teacher is keeping up with her Moodle site and putting the weekly assignments down. Then even the parents can check in and say, did Johnny turn his homework in on time? And even the parents can take a look at that and see, whether they uploaded it to the teacher so she could grade it or not.
Something that's also interesting is sometimes the students will take the device, but they'll work off of their phone as well. Sometimes they choose to do that, and if it's a web-based access, they can do that.
But that was to Jason's point. He said that that's a no-no.
Well, you can't stop them from accessing the public domain site.
Right, but
We don't encourage it. We don't encourage it.
We don't encourage it. I
We don't
understand.
encourage it.
Because I don't think we encourage that in the county either for
Right.
people to.
Oh, we don't encourage it, but sometimes because it's web-based,
Right.
we have students that have used that before.
And one of the best things y'all have done, I think, is Power School. I love it. What best thing for parents, worst thing for kids, I guess.
Every morning.
So you keep up and track of what they're doing. But this is not, we understand technology. I don't think there's one of us up here that doesn't use technology. It's just, again, being a partner in this with you, better understand it. I watch our faces as we're talking about this. It's like, we got to talk about this again, because it's something like we hear it 100 times, but if the public's hearing it for the first time, it's tough. And then we're hearing a lot of this stuff for the first time. And again, we hear from teachers and we hear from people employed in the school system, then they have concerns too. So any other questions on that, Frank?
How many technicians have we had to add to the staff to support this initiative?
It's been a long time since we added staff to that.
Pardon?
It's been a long time since we've added staff to that category, but Dr. Webb may know more details.
From an engineer standpoint, Commissioner, is that what you're asking me?
I'm curious how many technicians have had to be added to staff to support this one-to-one initiative?
Yeah, I
from the
believe
time of
that
its
our
inception
engineers,
to today?
I might be off one. I think we have 5 techs that work the depot. And then there is 1 engineer at each of the schools, middle and high. There's none at the elementary. We service those. So what is that? About 25. So we keep 1 engineer at the middle, 1 engineer at the high school, and 5 at the depot to handle the elementary that come in and so forth.
Okay. And then one follow-up question to that. You mentioned, Dan, that you're constantly reviewing your initiatives and looking at what you're doing, and some things work and some things don't. I guess just out of curiosity, do we have any other large initiatives that we're planning that maybe we need to be made aware of?
I don't get involved necessarily in those big
Mr. Akins,
picture.
we're going to be hiring a new superintendent this fall.
Well, I suspect you will. No, but
That's about it. Yeah, we don't have any.
We don't have any new big instructional initiatives. We're continuing to, work on our academies and our programming, but we don't have any big new initiatives pending.
Yeah, and I think that the Sun Valley campus would be an example of something that we think would actually make a great difference in this county's instructional program.
Okay.
Okay, so $38 million sounds like a lot of money. I don't really know where Mr. Lance got that total. I think the number I come up with about 21.8 million, sir. And if you talk to the county about their technology budget, you would know that it's expensive to run a technology program. And then $1.8 million is actually made up of state and local money. So the county really hasn't pumped in as much as it might sound like. And then if you break that over a 7-year period, so if you could help me with where you found that number, we'd look forward to answering what makes up that 38, if you have that number.
Well, unfortunately, I've had to kind of piece it together because the school system doesn't give us that information.
I actually sent you a graph of that last Friday.
You sent me the graph
or 2
for
Fridays ago.
for the technology.
Yes,
not
sir.
the other things that go together with it, and not part of the one-to-one. But that was just after we'd requested it since 2009. So we're in year 7, and we finally get the information that totals it up. It doesn't include all the other things, including the technicians. So it is difficult when we're talking about whether it's 21 million or it's 38 million that's pulled out of operational. There's no transparency for that. Show me where in your budget I can go back through and see where those laptops are pulled out for the last 5 years, 6 years, 7 years.
And we will be happy to do that at a later date. I think that's what it comes down to. We have the answers to a whole lot of questions. You gave us a lot of questions, and we're willing to give you answers to anything you have to ask. So that's the key to this relationship, is to have a back and forth and making sure that you understand what challenges we have and how we go about trying to fund them if we don't get it from federal or state sources and or local sources.
I do, but if I don't see what the numbers are each year, it's very tough for us to gauge what the needs are if we can't see where it's going. In the budget this year, I see the 2016 budget, but I don't see where some of the backup documents are on where you're justifying some of this information. You know, I'll use something very simple. We'll go back to utilities. In last year's budget, you guys asked for another $700,000, and you were pretty forceful about saying that you knew utility costs were going to go up. You needed $763,000. And if I'm looking at it correctly, it went up $120,000. And you're asking for $563,000 this year above and beyond. But I see no documents that kind of give us an idea on where those numbers are coming from. That's the kind of information that for me would be helpful, is additional budget documents. If you want to break it down by code and say, here's what we spent each of the last 5 years, here's what the original budget was, the amended budget, and then on top of that, here's what we actually spent in each category along with transfer in and transfer out.
Right.
Without having to dig through numerous files, I'm having a hard time trying to put this together where some of these numbers are coming from. Quite honestly.
And that's the nature of the uniform budget format. And essentially, utilities is a perfect example. We don't really know. You know, I don't know what the county's using in their budget to project what utility costs are going up, but you have the coal ash issues going on. And then it's also dependent upon the weather. So we had a good year last year because the weather wasn't that bad. We didn't have the AC cranking like crazy. That's the difference in what could happen to a utility budget.
Well, I don't think it's a budget issue as far as it's the information that we're getting. It's disjointed at best, trying to put things together. For example, on the Friday before we had our meeting, on the whatever that day was, I apologize, you sent over a large packet of material that included budget codes for each year and their spreadsheets, and it was basically a data dump for us that night, for us to see for the budget on Monday morning.
Yes, sir.
When it should have been relatively easily to pull out each individual year and do a comparison year over year, so we can see a trend from year to year on where some of these dollars are going. That helps us be able to understand your needs.
And I was providing
And I
it to
think that
county
this is,
staff.
and I think this is good, excuse me, Mr. I think this is good dialogue. And as opposed to you didn't, let's do a lesson learned so that we know what we need to do going forward. And I know some may say, well, it's common sense, or it's the way what one person may think it should be done and what another, but this is good dialogue to take note to what it is that you want to see, what we should be providing. And I think that we can take that as a lesson learned and move forward and just, understand and recognize that's good feedback.
Well,
and I was under the impression that some of this information we give monthly to
Yes,
staff.
sir. Oh, yes, ma'am.
And so
This is an important thing, because in your budget ordinance last year, you asked for specific data. And you said you wanted an electronic format, and we've been giving it to the county monthly. So, Mr. Yates, have we complied with that ordinance for now going on 2 years?
You comply with the monthly reporting ordinance, yes.
Very good. And how did you ask for it? Did you ask for it in data format?
Okay.
And I think what Commissioner Simpson's referring to is a resolution passed in February where they asked for specific information related to the budget.
And I gave.
Not the monthly information
Right.
request, but the budget request.
Right, and that's what we're working for, and that's what we're here
And I
now
provided
to
it.
do.
Think about it this way. We don't sit around and have a lot of discussions about your budget. Probably we should have more.
we don't look at, we're not looking at new and creative ways to cut. At least this board has been very adamant about making sure that we do have what you need. But at the same time, you've heard it and you understand it, and you as a board of adults, you can make good decisions. I voted it. And we just need to understand why you voted on this. Because just like when we vote on something, people just want to understand why we make those decisions. And if we just know that reason, sometimes it's just as simple as, hey, this is the law. This is the way we're supposed to do it. And it's as easy as that. And what we're looking for is just, as we go through and make the hard decisions about setting that budget, that we understand your reason. And you have, there's things that you disagree on. We've seen that in public, and we would expect y'all to disagree on things from time to time. But is it a situation where we have a priority in one area or another? We just don't know sometimes. So this information of what we're asking, what you're providing, and hopefully even more information comes in the future, it just helps us understand what your needs are. And as this moves forward, hopefully the Board of County Commissioners School Board understand each other so good that we don't even have to worry about this. It's very, that's why we need the information. Again, we're not trying to find things to take away from it. We're really not doing that. I don't think that any of you disagree with that statement. There's not been a meeting that we're trying to take. We're trying to provide and make sure that we protect the taxpayers.
Our questions, the volume of questions, I know they probably seem overwhelming. That I think it's a joint responsibility and a failure that we haven't gotten together before. I'm on the Education Steering Committee for State Association of County Commissioners. And so I get to talk to the county commissioners from the sites and the ones that work well. It's one common thread I keep hearing from. I had one gentleman say, I meet with them weekly. And they meet on a regular basis. And it's kind of like a building block. The questions can answer themselves if we get together enough and ask questions, and maybe it won't seem confrontational if we do this on a continuing basis. And as we better understand your budget process and you understand our abilities, I think that'll help all of us. But I look forward to many more of these meetings. We've had 2 recently, and so there's a lot of questions. But once we meet together more frequently, we'll be able to spread the questions out and have a better understanding and not seem to be dumping questions on you. And I don't mean to say dumping, but we have questions we don't understand.
Could I ask a question of the county, maybe if staff wants to chime in? What is your budget adoption schedule as far as, do you have assigned workshops specifically for the education budget where it might behoove us to have staff in attendance or someone to answer questions? Do you have a specific workshop for just the education budget set up?
We have not in the past, and that primarily because statutorily, you are not required to give us a budget until May 15th, and I have to present a recommended budget to the Board of County Commissioners by June 1st, which does not precludes having a lot of dialogue. Now, I have talked to some of the school districts who they make the determination that we understand where you don't have to submit it until May 15th, but may do so sooner than that so that those type of dialogues and workshops can occur.
I would assume you'll have some type of work sessions before you make your final budget decisions. And if we kind of had a feel for or an invite to those, knowing that education would be on the topic at that particular work session, it might help expedite things by having someone there to answer questions directly rather than we have to go back and forth. Does that, do you do the same kind of thing?
I have to deliver my budget to the board really by Friday.
In a week.
With my recommendation, it also relates to
Okay.
CPS because it has to be the entire budget document. I'm required to do that statutorily. So there will be a public hearing on the budget as a whole, which right now is slated for June 6th. which at that point in time, the focus will be on the entire budget, but since there hasn't been a public hearing on the UCPS portion, I would anticipate, I won't speak for my board, but I would anticipate that's where they may focus a lot of their attentions. And then they have to adopt it no later than June 30th.
Do you anticipate any special called meetings for your budget other than just the 2 in June and adopt it towards the end? How do you anticipate? Okay. Do you have a feel for that yet? Oh, okay. All right. Well, if and when you do, it might be helpful if we could have people in attendance, if we know that's going to be the topic, besides the hearing, if we know that's going to be the topic of a regular meeting or a work session you have, if we could, attend to provide instant answers rather than having to get back to us, if that'll help the process, I'll offer somebody else to go who knows what to be talking about.
One thing good about you coming to our meetings, and I know that Mr. Boyd and Melissa, Ms. Hale came, I think you've been to a few of our meetings. One thing you get to see when you come to our meetings is, and we came to your meetings, and we get to see what you do. I think it's wonderful how you take the kids and you bring them in and you follow them for their achievements and the things that you do in your meetings. I wish we could do those things. Very nice. But when you come to our meetings, you see the challenges we face. You see the homeless shelter. The folks come and ask for money to help build a new homeless shelter because there's a need there. You see the fire departments come and ask for funding. The libraries, which we're trying to find some exciting, creative ways to make those things happen. And when you don't realize this, but hearing the things that you say, just like the broadband, those plant seeds in our minds as the people who find the money. We're looking for the money. We're trying to find ways to get the money to you. So when I look at the dropout rate, one thing that we do in our private business is we try to help the dropout rate because there's some kids that don't want to stay in school unless they're in vocational agriculture or they're in FBLA. Dr. Junax told us last week how FBLA and those businesses and vocational instruction help keep those kids in school. And I know that because I was in FFA. That's probably why I'm sitting here. We understand that helps. We just need to know what the challenges you're facing so we can help facilitate this. Because we have kids in school. We have a state business. The businesses that we try to recruit to come to Union County through economic development, they don't come here because we got bad schools. And y'all know that. We know that. And any challenges that you face, we don't need to throw them up. And I would hope that y'all, there's issues, there's disagreements that we have. But I would hope that y'all have seen over the last year, we really have tried to downplay any problems that we've had. There's problems with the public. Last time I had the good fortune of not having social media when I was county commissioner, but we got it now on both sides. Our challenge is to look past that and what we can do for the kids in this county, the taxpayers in this county. So meeting, having these discussions, knowing what we can do to help find this money, find these grants that we look for, opportunities with community college. We have used the community college and the public schools together. Those are the challenges that we like to get. We like to find money and help you find ways to do what you need to do. But we can't do it if we don't understand what you're doing. And that's what we don't always understand. Hopefully, again, this is the beginning of a better understanding.
And again, bringing this back full circle, there was a lot of discussion tonight around digital text and traditional text. And I just want to make sure that you know that Exhibit G is on the second page of the budget. We're asking $315,000 to help, supplement because we're not getting the money, from the state to take care of these texts. So I just wanted, to be clear, everything we talked about is that line item Exhibit G. So, if you'll put a star next to that and take a look at it, because we are in a position right now, we're needing biology texts, in the high schools. And I believe that was also for reading and literacy programs. And RAS kids at the elementary level. And so if you would just, definitely take, because we had a lot of discussion about it, but if you would just make a note about Exhibit G and take a good look at that when you're considering the funding for that.
Imagine the strength of both boards
Mhm.
going to the state legislators and saying, we need this fully funded. If you're going to mandate it, we need full funding. The fact that all of us can go do that would mean a lot more than just you doing it or just us doing it. And the more we work together on finding that, because we don't want to have to take local dollars for initiative that they've mandated that we do. We speak louder together than we do apart. And I think that's what the parents see, and the frustration that we're seeing from the parents now is that we, again, are not working to plan better and do better by the children.
You're absolutely right. And Dr. Jones talked about how the state did fund textbooks on a grade level or a curriculum level in the past, and now doesn't do it the same way. But with the commitment towards increasing teacher salaries, I hope that will also be a consideration on the state level, that they have not only higher pay, but also the funds for the tools they need.
What is your priority? You have, I believe it's $4 million a year for the refresh, is that correct?
Approximately.
So what is the priority? When we talk about teacher supplements, you have $4 million a year built into the one-to-one initiative. Can some of that money be used to help teachers as well? What I understand, UCPS is far ahead of the rest of the state from an LEA standpoint in adopting the one initiative. So why can't some of that money be used to help teachers? I went through, and I'm trying to look at the numbers to make sure, because I don't understand where some of the teacher supplements are going and why there's not additional supplements available for the teachers. So if we have $4 million, shouldn't that be a priority to take care of the teachers rather than the computers?
And that's what we did. We took that.
Rather than computers, you have textbooks. So rather than do a $4 million to replace laptops on an ongoing basis, because UCPS is already far ahead of the rest of the state, correct? Is there any other LEA that is ahead of UCPS from an adoption rate for the one-to-one?
I don't know, but the refresh isn't to increase. That's for laptops that are obsolete and aged out. So if we don't replace those, then we're taking a step backwards. And then our students, we won't be able to do the online testing. And that's the problem. We have to do the online testing. And if we don't do that and we don't refresh, we can't do that.
So how are the other LEAs doing it? They're not as far along as UCPS. So how are they accomplishing it when they don't have a laptop? And my assumption is that they made a choice, and they prioritized teachers ahead of the one-to-one initiative. The UCPS went the opposite route, prioritized one-to-one for teachers.
And I like to think of it not as one-to-one, but as student instruction.
I'm using the term UCPS.
But we prioritize students number one. That's how I look at it. I don't know about you. My first job, I didn't use a computer. My second job, I used a desktop. My third job, I'm now using laptops and iPads. We have to continue to move forward with technology to make sure we're instructing our students to the best level, to the top level. I don't like sound basic education. I think we need to be sound advanced education. We need to make sure we are continuing to advance, continuing to move forward, and ensuring that our students are ready to compete, not just in Union County, not just in the Charlotte metro region, not just in North Carolina, but in the U.S. and the world. And that's not going to happen if we continue to talk about why don't they have textbooks. We need to make sure we're talking, do they have the curriculum they need in some way, shape, or form?
Well, you threw up a bunch of other LEAs that had higher performance than UCPS, correct? That was in the earlier slide? That was one of the comparables? Equivalent.
Not performance.
And are they as far along in the one-to-one adoption as UCPS?
I don't know.
Well, a lot of those LEAs, while we were sitting here, I did look them up, and they only have 2,000 students, 4,000 students. We're trying to take care of over 42,000 students and, all of our teachers.
But they also get additional state funds and other things. So that's one of the things I'm trying to understand is other LEAs have not made the one-to-one push as strongly as UCPS. And I understand Learning for Tomorrow, but the response I always get is, we need them for testing. Well, how are the other LEAs doing it? Because they're under the same mandate UCPS is. So why at some point, before we got to this stage, didn't UCPS put teachers first instead of computers? And once the teachers were taken care of from a supplement standpoint, then we started working on the one-to-one initiative.
Again, I think we put students at the center and the technologies to support the student learning. So I think it's not accurate to say we put computers in front of teachers. We put student learning, student excellence, and student instruction as our number one priority. And that's how I see it.
And I might add that we had about 2.9 million left, and we took all of that and gave the teachers a bonus at the end of the year. So we did make our teacher, we took that complete balance that was going to be for their teacher refresh. And instead of the teachers getting their laptops, we gave them the money. So we did do that.
And at the end of 15, where did that money go?
Well, I'm talking about today, what we did.
But at the end of last year, there was a balance left over approximately.
But
20 million.
we
Did
took
that-
it
that was
all.
a one-time
We
payment?
took it all. We took it all. What was left, the entire balance, we took it off
In
and gave it.
16, I understand that, but in 15.
And that was money it was carried over.
Interesting, but at the end of 15, Mr. Kapinski mentioned there's $3 million left over, I believe. And that was for the one-to-one initiative. So again, I'll ask, if you did it this year, why not last year? Why not going forward? That some of that money gets used to take care of teacher supplements. And I appreciate one of the responses that I got back, I think it was yesterday or today, on the question on the supplement. I'm trying to find numbers that match, to be quite honest. If I go to DPI's website, I show teachers, elementary, secondary, and other teachers totaling 2,517 from total funds. Under your paperwork that you sent me, I showed 2,441. So if I take the supplement this year, and I take that supplement, I divide it 84.5%, which is what you said went to teachers, I come up, according to DPI's numbers, with a supplement of $4,309 per teacher. If I use your numbers, it's $4,443 per teacher. But based on your charts, I'm only showing a $3,776 supplement for a 5-year teacher and $4,100 for a 15-year teacher. Both of those supplements are significantly less than the numbers I came up with using what you provided.
Now, you've got to realize that some of those, a teacher is a teacher even if they're a principal, if they're a media specialist. And so I think that's where we'll talk some of what a teacher is.
And we only show
believe you
you the
broke those
first
out.
15 years. Of course, teachers that are more experienced get more supplement. Then you also have high priority supplements into that mix.
But it still averages out.
Yes,
you pay
and
more
we have
or less,
slides
it
about that
averages
as well, going forward. Yes, sir.
And the numbers, that's why, and I believe you said, your comment was the percentage of object code 181 that is provided to teachers. Please see the attached pie chart, and this reflects 84.5% of object code 181, which is classroom teachers. Using your statement and using the numbers that you provided, the average teacher supplement in Union County should be $4,443. If
Sir,
it's not,
that actually is the DPI definition of teachers. And there are media specialists in there and other categories of people that, when we report to the state, they capture that data as teachers. So I think you have the report possibly at your desk right in front of you that shows the state asks us yearly on the SS 300 that I think is right in front of you, and it says who's teachers, who's principals, assistant principals, coaches, band.
I'm using the statement from the letter Chairman Boyd, or Vice Chair Boyd, sent to us today. And it says, object code 181 is classified as classroom teachers. All of those teachers were provided the appropriate supplement, which is 84.5% of the $12.8 million.
Yes,
If I
sir.
do this simple math, I come up with a $4,400 supplement.
And that's the problem. You're doing the wrong math. And we'll explain to you further in this presentation that your math is wrong.
Okay,
Okay? Thank
I would
you.
love to see that.
All right, I want to go back to Ms. Boyd with two things. One thing, Commissioner Simpson, you alluded to the utilities. Now, in 2015-16, you said you requested $692,000 for increased utility expense, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so when I look at your Exhibit C, in actuality, it was 115, a little over 100, almost 116,000, right?
I'd have to look at it. I
Well,
don't
I can tell
memorize
you,
every
based
number
based
on
on
a
the numbers
page.
you gave me, it's 115,
Right.
752. My question is, Ms. Merrill, you mentioned you needed 315,000 for digital traditional content curriculum. Could that $576,248 not be used to fund that? Or where did that money go?
The year's not over, and, you know, we don't, the bills
But yet
aren't
you're asking
done.
for 600, you're asking for an additional $477,248 this year.
That's right, and it's a budget, it's a proposal, it's a projection of what we think we might need, but honestly, some of these numbers, you're not sure what the number to even project is, especially when you don't get it. You know, we didn't get anything from the state this year. We usually got planning allotments from the state. They didn't give us till late. Then the governor came out. The House budget actually came out after our budget was due to you. So talking about, you know, what Ms. Coto's talking about, it's very difficult to put together data when you don't have the data from places, from other areas. Mr. Yates, what did you use for a % of utilities increase in your budget?
I think in total, we're up just a little less than 1%.
But how much did you project going forward for the next 5 years?
Talking about for the next budget cycle, we're up about a little less than 1%. Probably for the next 5 years in total, we're probably up 3 or 4%. I think we'd grow that at inflation at about 2. So
3 or 4 plus 2. So
given
more
our
than,
initiatives and everything else we've done with lighting and building and HVAC systems, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect we'll be about 1% growth.
well, that's great that you've been able to retrofit your lighting, and that's a lot of part of capital budgeting. If you want to reduce your electric costs, you got to make sure these balusters are the lowest they can be. Things of that nature cost money, and it's capital dollars that we're talking about.
And
One thing that I've learned in the school and that the School of Government showed us was the fact of what you're saying with the budget. Your budget comes out in pieces from the state, the federal, the local. So you may not know what you're going to get until later in the year even. So, you know, I think we would like to see more of, and you may be providing this to staff, Jeff, you tell me if you're getting this, like if you have savings, if you have those electric savings, you know, where does that money go? Is it just used, is it thrown into a pot and used for things that y'all want to do? Or again, going back to the one-to-one initiative, if those kinds of dollars are going in, if you're saying that we need so much, what are you doing with the savings and where can we use it?
Don't you think that becomes micromanagement on the Board of County Commissioners' part?
Listen, we really do it to them. We have to raise our hands to set the tax rate. And we do it to our staff. I'm sure they get tired of us micromanaging, I guess, them. But when we have to raise our hands and we get the phone calls of why did you raise my taxes, we just want a good answer to that. And if we got a good answer to it, then the people seem to take that pretty well. But if we don't know, if one hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing, it makes it tougher for us to explain that. And as we move away, I hope to see that we move away from the political arguments and get back to business, get back to the business arguments. Lance is making some very good questions in regards to teachers, because in years past, we've been beat over the heads by saying, well, you don't like the teachers, so you do this. Well, I love my kids' teachers. I stand behind my kids' teachers. We'll do anything to help my kids' teachers that we possibly could. I have a lot of friends that are teachers. I have a lot of teachers that are still teachers. There's nothing that we want other than to do, again, make Union County Public Schools the best system in the state. But we need to know, again, be a partner with you and knowing where the money goes. And I don't want you to take offense to that. And I don't want you to think it's micromanaging, because these are sincere questions that we have. And it seems like a lot, but it's due to years past. We just haven't maybe done as well as we could in communicating with each
Well, the
other.
way the statutes are written, you basically have the ability to go to function, purpose, pretty much that's it. You've taken the opportunity to try to go further than that. We have uniform budgets, and it's pretty much what we spend money on salaries, what we spend money on benefits, what we spend money on instructional materials and supplies, what we spend on contracted services. Anything below that is below the line. So let's move on if we can.
We need to take a break. There's some board members that need to.
Just one follow-up question to Commissioner Akins' question. So what methodology did you use to arrive at the 12.5 million in utilities this year? Can you just walk us through that?
Essentially took the budget and added 5% to it. No other methodology other than that.
And that's why I'm trying to understand, is that your approach for some of these categories?
No, everything else other than that is based on comparison to other supplements in the state and national. If you look at our budget request of 15.
Can I jump in for 1 second? Like, I'll give you an example, Commissioner Simpson. The money for the curriculum and the instructional materials that Ms. Merrill spoke about. The curriculum committee and the finance committee actually asked Dr. Jones and his team to come up with what number they needed. So it wasn't just a swag 5%. It was, what do you need over and above what you have to put into the budget? A lot of the items in there are, so I mean, so I hope that shows you that there is some, some thought process around that. Some of the items.
You start with asking, what do you need this year as a need, and then build it from there, rather than what do you need in additional to what you had last year. I mean, the typical budget process is, let's start with the basic need and we build from there. So we start from $0 and we build based on what our needs are, not from here's what I had last year and here's what I want to get next year. That way, if you go back from $0, you have a better understanding of opportunities to reduce costs in one area, or you go up in another. You truly have a good picture of what the budget is, rather than just saying, what additional do you need? Because there may be some savings that you miss doing that.
And we wish the state would do that. The state doesn't even do that. They start with their base budget.
But we're not the state.
We're not the state.
The thing is, we're not an entity that has brought up Charlotte Meck. Why don't you do it like Charlotte Meck? Give us information like Charlotte Meck does. They have 10 people in their finance division with the name budget in it. We don't have one with budget in it. Sean and I do it all.
All 10-minute recess. We'll be back at 6:45. Jeff keeps us straight over there.
Oh, Jeff, your,
Jeff
Jeff's
Crook.
your money
Jeff
man
Crook.
and your
Jeff Crook.
timer?
No, Jeff Crook, right?
Miss Kodo, are you not the timer?
Pardon me?
I hear that Jeff.
Well, we were in there eating cookies and I said, oh my gosh, we gotta get back.
Here, just. It's just you.
Okay.
Mr. Akins, I didn't get a chance to speak to you when you came in. Over there, over there. You look young every time I see you. Look like a little schoolboy over there.
Call the meeting back to order.
We're now continuing. Make sure your mic's on, Mr. Kopinski. Is your mic on? There you go.
I was just trying to smile more and talk less.
Let me ask a quick question. If we leave the mics on, that's okay, right?
Just be careful what you say.
Okay. Well, no, we're always careful of that. Okay. Well, if we leave, so they're not going to all blow if we, all of them. Okay. Thank you.
And if I may, I did go back one chart real quickly. One of the commissioners, I believe it was Mr. Simpson, Jerry Simpson, asked the question about, why do you need 17%? Well, when you consider all funding sources, state, local, federal, the ask is a little more than 5%. So just saying that it may sound large when you just look at the local budget, but that's primarily because of the need for increased teacher supplements and other compensation issues that are lagging compared to surrounding counties and the national market. So let me go fast forward. And Mr. Simpson, Lance Simpson, will probably interject a little bit on this slide. We send a report to the state. It's off of our HRMS system, and I feel that the HRMS data has been cleaned up tremendously over the years. And one of the reasons that I believe that to be the case is because when we bring a person in the door, it used to be we'd input it to HRMS and then we'd input it to the payroll system. Now we have an interface. So that it was an efficiency that helped tremendously. But essentially in October, I believe that report's due, maybe even November. And this is what was reported at that time. Well, essentially time goes on, people leave, attrition, people come, people go. So at that point in time, that's what made up the 84.5% of Mr. Lance Simpson's question. He had mentioned that he thought it might have been an average of 19,000, I believe. He worked it through. And I think looking at different sources of data, it's difficult to take that monthly report, compare it to the state reporting, and come up with the numbers that are reality. Essentially, that 12,836,492 on Exhibit B is broken down by 3,488 people, and 84.5 are teachers based on the state definition of teachers that they accept for the SS 300 back in October. And then, of course, 4.4% goes to principals. 1.1 goes to directors and supervisors, assistant principals, which happens not to be there, but it should say 3.9% for assistant principals. High school coaching, 5.2% of it, 0.4% for band directors, and then a sliver for other.
Mr. Popinski?
Yes.
Could I ask a question?
Yes,
In
ma'am.
line with the percentage that's outlined for other, could you give an example as to how other is encompassed in, because every other category has
Yeah.
examples.
It's so minute. I think if I'm not mistaken, and Shauna may be chiming in on this, I think we're talking about less than $100,000, and we just didn't go to the extent of trying to identify all those people that get that supplement, but it wasn't assistant superintendents or superintendents. I just couldn't go that deep that fast. How about I put it that way?
You mentioned 3,488
Yes, sir.
teachers.
No, that's the total pool of all those people on the graph.
Okay.
So 84.5% of that would be the teacher amount.
So the number that you provided to DPI October, November, and I know it fluctuates a little bit.
Yes, sir.
The 2,517 is accurate for classroom teachers?
I would have to do some quick math or get back to you on it. I mean, we want to make sure this information reconciles. And you're right. You try to go out and get all this data, sift through it. It's difficult. It's even difficult at the national level. It's difficult at the state level. Go try to look at other states the way they do it. I'm wanting to help reconcile your numbers to my numbers. We can do it, but it's going to be something that we have to work through maybe at another meeting, sir.
Well,
and I'd be happy to meet with you one-on-one.
I'm just trying to understand where these numbers are coming from, because we brought this up at the last meeting and you provided the information. I do appreciate that. And I'm basing it on your letter that you sent that said these are classroom teachers. That 84.5% represents classroom teachers. The number provided by DPI, and it is a higher number than you provided. So I'll use DPI's number, which actually gives you a lower supplement per teacher, is $4,309 per teacher in a supplement. DPI's number is 2,517 teachers. Your number that you provided was 2,441. So I used the 2,517 and I come out with what should be pretty close, because if we look at, any idea how many classrooms, instructional classrooms we have with teachers in the school system? Classrooms.
Just south of 2,000, Dr. Webb just mentioned.
We have, I can't give you the classroom, our classroom, but I give you the teachers. We have 2,510 teachers. That was on the SS 200 before.
2,510?
2,510 teachers.
Okay.
Now that's again two different snapshots. That snapshot in time is on one day at one time of the year. Two at SS 200 is on one day. So it could be.
Dimensionally, it's correct. Dimensionally, it's correct. So if I use the 2,510, the number that I'm coming up with, and I'm going out, I'm using the budget that you provided, that PRC for supplements under 181, 12,836,492, 84.5% of that number is 10,846 and change.
And
if I divide that by 2,510, that's a supplement of 4,321 per teacher.
Yeah, and the
using
way
your
I get
teacher
at it,
numbers that you provide.
right, and I get at it because it's a different point in time, and that's what's really messing it up some.
Take out the different point in time.
Right. Well, let me try to explain the graph that's on the screen, please.
It is 25.
Right. You
It's
take
2,510
3,488 people times 84%, 84.5, and you get an average teacher supplement of $2,947.36. Does that get anywhere closer to your number?
So the 3,488 is not everything shown on this chart. It is only the 84.5.
No, there's 3,488 people represented in that entire pie chart.
And the 84.5, which represents teachers,
Right.
is the 2,510 number just stated.
Okay, so you take, I don't know about that because I have
That's
three,
what the gentleman there just, and I apologize, I don't even know. Dr. Clark, I'm sorry.
he's
Dr.
talking
Clark
about a
just
different point in
Yeah, and
time for
you've-
sure.
You've also got the matter that, different teachers, every month we change teachers. We have teachers that retire or resign, and so we have teachers come on, teachers that go off. And they are two different periods of time, 2 different months. that these two reports are done, the SS 200 and SS 300. So yes, 2,510 teachers at the SS 200 that we did this year.
So how did you calculate the teacher supplement average?
Okay, I think, are you talking with T?
You put the
What
slide up.
what
How
I
did you
did was
calculate it?
I took the SS 200 report, no, excuse me, SS 300 report that was done back in, I believe, November. And it says on there that 10,800,000 or thereabouts
That's the
was-
84%.
was a part of the total 12,800,000 in our budget. Okay, so when we send that report to Raleigh, they won't let you code somebody to a teacher code unless they're a valid certified teacher, but that teacher might be in a media center or other function, and I don't know all those functions. But if you take the 3,488 people represented in that entire pie chart, multiply it times that 84.5%, you get 2,947 at that point in time. And that would be the number of teachers.
2,947.
Yes, sir.
That represent the 84.5.
Yes.
Then why does the letter state that 84.5 represents classroom teachers?
Because that's the way the
letter
state
they
defines
use.
teachers.
So it's not classroom teachers. I guess an easier question would be, are we paying teachers that are not teaching in the classroom a supplement for the same, at the same rate that we pay teachers that are teaching in the classroom?
Well, they get supplements other than just local. They get, if they've got a master's, if they're certified, those.
I understand that, but it's paid for from the local funds.
Right.
And I have to do all the numbers here, but you've got, the number I gave you were classroom teachers. The number that Dan's given you includes more than classroom teachers. You've got guidance counselors. You've got other personnel that get that, curriculum coordinators, those right personnel. So we could break that down for you as to what that number is. So,
and that's the
not
29.
something-
That's the 2,900.
29.
29.
I have the number.
Yes,
Yes,
it's more.
sir.
That would be closer to what that number would be.
That's how they're classified. That's the word, they're classified.
Right. Like the school nurse is not getting that bonus, that supplement.
Well, she's getting a separate. She's getting
Right,
a
but not
Right,
not
right.
that supplement.
So that's how they're
But
classified.
anybody with a teaching certificate, regardless of what position they're in, is that fair, that they're getting a supplement? That's included in that 84?
Yes.
Are there teachers outside of the classrooms, outside of the schools that are receiving that supplement?
Yes.
And so if I look at,
A curriculum coordinator could be at a school.
but he's physically located at school. How many people that are not physically located at a school that are teaching kids on a daily basis are receiving the teacher supplement?
If you had a secretary that was working, that used to be a teacher, they wouldn't get the supplement. So just like you're saying, because y'all were saying, if they had a teaching, yeah, okay.
But if they're licensed, would they still receive it? Regardless of the position they're in, if they're a licensed teacher.
Principals are licensed too. So they would get a supplement to that particular area. It really just depends. I have to do the data dig to get some of the answers to the questions.
And this is where I'm struggling with some of the information, because I'm looking at what DPI is providing, what UCPS provided, the letter that you provided yesterday or today, and none of the numbers match up. Even the information that you have provided, it's changed. And so I'm
that's the
trying to
problem.
understand, that's one of the reasons why I'm really struggling. We need to pay our teachers more, but it seems like we're paying a lot of money for people who are not teachers and teaching in the classroom.
Well,
And
I do
unless I'm
think
missing
that
something.
they are basically people in schools doing work for schools. Those people aren't in central services. When they're called a teacher, they're at a school. A good example is a media specialist. Not in a classroom, but children use the media centers all day long. So that's
But they're
what-
physically located in the school, interacting with
And
children.
I believe that 84.5, maybe 84% are in a school daily, but some people are split. Sometimes you have some of these people go into two different schools because we don't have enough of that position. What they are, I don't know, but my thought on this is that one, you have to be certified as a teacher, and two, you should be supporting students in some way, shape, or form at or in the school.
But not necessarily, you don't have to be in the schools, correct? Can you be located outside the schools? Can you be in central offices and
No.
receive the supplement?
That would be the directors and supervisors, that 1.1%. And I apologize, but the pie chart that is yellow, that is assistant principals. If you want to just jot that down, that assistant principal amount is 3.9% of the total pie. But yes, well, I believe, and I don't know this for sure, I'd have to run some numbers and look at the data myself. 84% of those people are supporting schools at that school or those schools in some way, shape, or form, helping students learn.
You all understand how important the classroom teachers, and this is to his point. He's trying to illustrate just how important they are to us. Last year, when we came with our budget, there was the $3 million roughly in capital that we were looking at, like bond soft costs. And even though it was an ongoing cost, we looked at that and said, maybe it'd be better spent on the teachers. And that's why we committed to that. And that is what you have planned, right? That is an ongoing cost from that money last year. Is that correct?
The capital.
Right. What we did for the teacher bonuses.
Yeah, we're going to talk about capital
2.5.
later.
Yep.
Yeah. I think if you can let us finish this
Okay.
presentation, that would help get it moving along.
Let me ask one question. Of the amount that we're talking about, of the supplement, what is required by the state versus what is funded?
The local supplement is all local effort, period.
Okay, but what's the required amount by the state?
Zero.
So the state has a zero requirement for a supplement.
For local,
You mean for us to match what the state is offering? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
The state only impacts in base.
What the state is.
no, there's no match.
Right,
It's-
the state only does base. And so if you'll notice in our budget, when we said this is to give teachers money in line with the state raise, there are some teachers that are locally paid. And thus, if the state says we're going to raise the base salary from X to Y, we then have to, for locally paid teachers, match that as well. From a supplement standpoint, that is completely local. The state does not mandate it. That's why you have Charlotte Meck having one supplement, Union County having one supplement, all the others will have different supplements, but the base will be exactly the same. Did I articulate that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay.
So when we pay the assistant principals that are not funded by the state, maybe is that what you're asking? What's those local dollars?
They've answered my question, yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Shauna, could you move to this now? Thank you. In front of you, there's a packet with highlighted yellow. And this will get closer to home as to why there needs to be a local effort. Shauna's going to put that up on the screen, but please take the copies that you have in front of you and read the yellow highlighted items. I think we're all pretty conservative. We're conservative in terms of how we spend our money. Mr. Simpson, there's a copy for you right here.
I have one.
Oh, okay. So essentially what this is saying is how to pay teachers more, how to fix teacher pay. And what it comes down to is you have to look at not averages or whatever, but you have to look at the cost of living index in the community you serve. And how do you get there? We know the state's going to do what they're going to do. We're at the mercy of the state to give teachers base pay. So I'll just give you all a couple minutes to read that because it's intricate. At least reading the yellow highlights will kind of give you a feel for where I'm headed.
Are there increases that are just merit-based, that you got a really good teacher and it seems to be a lot of discussion about just across the board, bad, good, great.
Yeah, that's going to be a
Subpar.
state initiative. We can't even fathom that until the
So,
state.
so like if we got
tells
an
us.
excellent teacher, we can't compensate her more or him more.
Not that I'm aware of.
Wow.
And that's a statewide problem.
Dan,
So is
do
that
you-
something else? we
there,
need to
there is the
discuss with
special
this?
supplement for the teachers, the high priority teacher supplement.
That's
in our
right.
budget item.
And that's to go teach at a school that is lower performing.
Right.
We call them our high priority schools. So to attract teachers to those high priority schools, we have to have an increased supplement. And that supplement, we're asking for double to go to those schools.
It's not really merit pay per se for good teachers anywhere. It's recognizing the special responsibilities of teachers, support staff in the Title I most challenged schools.
That teacher may be helping do homework, just like a parent would. That teacher may be helping to do things that kids that are.
And maybe working with kids who don't have parents to
Right.
help. Yeah, exactly. So that's, you wouldn't classify that as merit,
Yeah,
but it's a
one more
special
slide.
incentive for the extra challenges they face.
Sean is going to change to the next slide. No, I'm talking about the actual cost of living document, Shauna. So we went out there and, you know, we all sometimes were under the impression that, well, it's inexpensive to live in Union County. That might have been the case 21 years ago, 22 years ago. But right now, the index for Union County is 99.2. So overall, Union County, North Carolina cost of living is 99.2. Next slide, please. Which is now going to, I believe, back to the presentation, Shauna. That's external information, so if you want to look up, I think that's a national thing, and we have all the sources. So if you can, no, I don't know if this is going to work. It doesn't go that far. Well, it does go that far. The national average in 2013 was $56,383. Then you apply the cost of living index of 99.2%, you get $55,932. Fast forward in Union County to 2016, you can see the state salary, 35 for years 0 to 4 years experience, 36.5 for 5 to 9, 40,000 for 10 to 14, and 43.5 for 15 to 19. Then you add the local supplement. Look how far off we are. And we're 3 years behind. And the only way we can do anything in Union County is to provide a bigger local supplement, bar none. There's no other way. Yep. Okay, let's move on to the next thing, and that source is the National Center of for Educational Statistics. Then we have next the UCPS average principal. Same context applies here. Local market average of, as per the slides you all got last week, 92,000. You do that local cost of living adjustment at that same 99.2%. Then you even look at the national median for 2015, and then you look at our principals. Look how poorly paid our principals are. Assistant principal data is so hard to find. It doesn't exist as far as I know. I know one of our biggest problems in Union County, is that assistant principals, there's no incentive to become an assistant principal.
Dan, excuse
Essentially,
me, very, very quick question.
Yes.
I'm looking at this slide. Is there anything to do with any of the principals also get that merit increase for the high priority schools?
no, well, that's included
It's
in
just
there.
classroom teachers.
Yeah. No, I shouldn't say that. No, the principals do not get that supplement to work at a high priority school. They may get an adjustment to attract them into the position, but that would be part of that 83,256, I believe.
Right. So could that be, I mean, how do we have more or less high priority schools than most school systems?
Well, I don't know percentage-wise, quite frankly.
We have 10 Title I schools, and then we have 4 high priority schools because our middle school and high schools are not Title I. So around 14 schools, what we currently have is high priority.
And forgive me again, the high school, middle school principal would make more or equal to an elementary school principal?
High school generally makes more than a middle or elementary, yes.
Okay, could any of that, again, be that we don't have as many high priority high schools as other counties may have? I mean, they don't have a incentive pay, maybe that's the.
I don't believe that's the case. I think, there's poverty everywhere. And guess what? When you go to look at their data, they're paying their people sometimes worse than we do because they can't afford it. And then their children suffer and become poverty, and it's a circle. It's a revolving circle. So next thing here.
Excuse me, on that last slide, do you have a slide that actually compares like cost of living areas rather than a national average?
Well, the index is 100. So if you live in San Francisco, it might be 180. New York City, 175. That's all out there. You can go to the same website I did.
But you just put the slide up that shows national, and there is such a wide variation nationally. Do you have something that gives a comparison on how we actually compare to similar areas where we have the same cost of living?
Other counties.
You can go to if you wanted it for Dare County.
Presentation. Do you have a presentation?
No, we can do that. I mean, it's out there.
Well, if you're throwing this up on the board,
yes,
I would expect that some of it is comparable to Union County, not just nationwide, because there is such a wide variation. So we do have a better understanding of exactly how we fit in there.
Yeah. Well, the definition of cost of living index is a national understood term.
Can we take that as a takeaway to get back to you, Commissioner Simpson?
Yes, you can go on any website. You can type in major areas, so you can do a comparison. You can find out what their cost of living, and then do the research that way, rather than do it nationally.
That's good. Okay.
Okay. On to the next slide. This gets to the charter school dilemma we're in. On June 7th, I'm going to take this to the Board of Education to be approved. It'll be part of their agenda. Usually we'll put those through on the consent agenda, but we're going to transfer $311,695 to the charter schools, and you can see where the money's coming from. Essentially, the county decided not to fund charter schools, so there it is. We're going to have to take money from somewhere else. We're taking money out of our classrooms, our benefits, and then instructional supplies and materials. And there's no way to do that other than maybe taking money from who knows where. But in this case, we have no choice but to take it from there. And then we wanted math on that.
Again, I thought that we couldn't fund charter schools. Like the county commissioners, we could not vote to give the charter schools in Union County $1 million.
You can't personally fund them directly.
Right.
But all the money comes, all you do is whatever we give you, or you give us, excuse me, we turn around and have to do a calculation. And that's the next chart.
We basically do all the accounting work and come to you and say, this much has to come through us to go to the charter schools.
Okay, but if we can't fund the charter schools, you want us to fund them indirectly, or?
That's what you do now.
That every union, it's required by law that every Union County public school, Union County resident, wherever they go to the charter school, they have to get a percentage of the local funds that we received.
Now, do we get monies from other states and counties whose children attend Union County public schools?
Not other states, but other counties, yes.
Do we have children from other states in Union County public schools?
Do you mean Union County Public Schools or Union County Charter Schools?
Public schools.
Public schools, we don't have students from other states unless they're, they could be an AC child in a special facility, a group home that comes to us. McKinney-Vento, if they're homeless, but for the most part, you have to be a resident domiciled in Union County to attend Union County Public Schools.
Okay,
And charter schools, they can take them from anywhere.
Yes, but I thought we had teachers that could bring their kids here. Like when I was in elementary school, my teacher from East Union
Yes,
could bring her
and
child
teachers
to
can bring their
Unionville.
children to the district with them as well.
Right, and that's a benefit to the teacher.
Absolutely.
Do we get any money for those kids?
No, because kids go, we have kids that we get, teachers who live in Charlotte, and their
Right.
kids come here, and we have teachers who teach in, who live in Union County, but teach in Charlotte, and their kids go there. It's considered a wash.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question on this? When you say we didn't fund charter schools, my understanding, charter school calculations are based off the ADM population divided by your operating expense. So therefore, as you get your operating expenses, you're getting money for the charter schools as well. To pay you separately seems like a double dip.
And it might seem that way, but the way it works is it's based on revenue. It's revenue driven. So
Well, I
if-
understand, but
Well, if we can
get
look
it.
at the chart, we can see how it works. Essentially, the county appropriation is one of the big things the law says we have to fund. So if you fund our budget fully at 107 million, we will have to pay the charter schools $6,996,510, and we would get 100,288,000.
And how did you calculate the 6.9 million?
The 6.9 is based on the estimate of students we at charter schools based on two main factors. The two brand new schools are going to come in at about 300 and 600. I didn't calculate any growth on the other charter schools such as Union Academy or Socrates Academy. We have a lot of children there. I just said, okay, I don't think we're going to have 600 or 300. I think the one that's expecting a little over 300, they might fill their seats, but the one that's expecting 900, I don't know that they'll fill their seats. But essentially, that's how it was done. It was calculated based on actual what happened this year and add those two new charters, but no growth for anything else.
Multiplied by what number?
Multiplied by the per pupil amount per child that they would get. This year it's between 21 and 2,200 per child. So when they send me an invoice, say Johnny, Susie, and Patty are at our school and they are Union County resident students, I take 3 students worth and put it together. Well, how long were you there? Were you there for the whole year, or were you only there for 7 months? And then I do that math. It's all based on ADM at every location if they're a Union County resident student.
So based on, if I go with Commissioner Helms' question, if you take let's just use 2,000 for easy math, and if there's 1,000 students that go to the charter schools, you took 2,000 times 1,000 students, correct? To come up with a number?
Approximately.
But those students are not here. So you're asking for the $2,000 per student in your original budget request,
Right, because
correct?
I'm writing a check to the charter school.
I understand that, but in your original budget request, you're asking for the $2,000 per student as part of your calculation.
It's more than that.
And then you're asking for additional $2,000 per student to give to the charter schools, correct?
No, sir.
Well, and
Show me
perhaps-
how that number doesn't work.
Here it
And
is.
maybe I can help, because I will tell you, when I first came to Union County and we laid out the budgets that way, I was confused as well. And so what we do is we give you the budget, what we need to educate those 43,000 students that are in Union County Public Schools. And then we say, okay, what's the per pupil amount for those students? And then we say, okay, we've got this many on charter schools, and that's that charter school calculation. So we've given you our budget for what we need to educate the students that are in our houses, and then added that, and that's why we just break it out for you. Not all districts break it out that way. They just give you a big lump sum. But we're saying to you, here's what we specifically need, and here's the additional amount for the charter schools.
So your
based
number-
on our student numbers.
So your number includes that you're basing your budget on the 107 million is on the 353 student growth above the ADM from last year, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm correct on that, Dan, aren't I not?
Yeah, and I'm trying to make sure that we don't cross hairs here.
Well, because all of these forecasts are based on McKibben's numbers. And if you go back and you look at McKibben's
Actually, that's
report,
not based on,
well, the
that is
forecast,
not.
if I extrapolate it out, the charter schools DPI's numbers, so if you're telling me that DPI's 353 includes the growth, that would include of all charter schools.
No, sir,
nearby.
that's not the way it is.
So-
We get a projection of Union County Public Schools numbers, and this has been happening before charter schools even existed.
I
We get a
understand.
number, a planning allotment, based on the number of students. They're the ones that tell us how many students they think that we're gonna have. Charter schools get that same thing. They have a planning allotment that says, hey, based on history or based on your charter, this is how many students you're gonna have.
Well, if I go through the numbers and I look at McKibben's report from December, McKibben projected 466 students, I believe, in this upcoming school year additionally, not the 353. His report clearly stated it did not include the impact of the 2 charter schools. So if we take, and you're saying that we need to add these back in, this would be the highest annual increase in Union County schools that I've been able to track going back, because you would be looking at a 1,500 student increase. And that is not realistic. So what the numbers that I've been able to determine, DPI forecasts 353 students, doesn't include the impact of those 2 new charter schools. So potentially, UCPS will end up losing 633 kids if 100% of those go to the charter schools. At a lower percentage, UCPS will actually net out with a loss at 70% going. One of them is expecting over 90% enrollment from Union County students. The other one, so I figured 70%. At 70%, Union County will have a decrease enrollment of 420 students.
But that's taking the assumption that all of those students that enroll are coming out of Union County Public Schools.
I'm assuming 70%.
But you're going to have a lot of those that are homeschool students that now go into the charter schools. So there's going to be, it's not going to be a straight, this is how many enroll and this is how many come out of Union County Public Schools.
Only 33% of those charter school enrollments have to come from Union County for you to have 0 increase in population.
But they don't have to come from Union County Public Schools. They can come from homeschooled students who live in Union County.
I understand.
And that's not going to, or private
But-
schools, that's not going to decrease
I
their
understand,
numbers.
but do you believe there are 986 students that are going to be coming out of Union County private schools, Union County homeschools this next year?
And other charter schools they may have already attended. So they could be attending a charter school in Mecklenburg or in somewhere in South Carolina, and they could also decide, hey, charter school closer to me, I'm going to transfer into that.
So I guess my question, because this is the budget number you're asking for, if your forecast is off and you end up with a decrease in enrollment, the additional funds that you're basing it on, where will those funds go?
We're only giving it back. If we ask for money from charter schools.
And that's a fair deal, quite frankly. If they don't show up and the numbers work out, we would be happy to return that money if it doesn't come to pass. I don't think they're going to have 900 students at those 2 no charter
We
schools.
received money back 1 year based upon funds, help me, Mr. Yates.
Teacher assistance.
Teacher assistance, those dollars. We did receive those back. That's, in my tenure since 2010, that's the only one that I recall.
And I think that would be a fair thing for the Board of Education to consider.
And what do? Look at our 40-day numbers and make that call? So you're talking
I would
November,
recommend a reconciliation because I do it monthly. I get 1/12 of my county appropriation. I put that on a spreadsheet. I get the other state dollars that are required to be sent to them. And every month, everybody's numbers fluctuate.
Well, you could do it monthly though, but I mean, you could use the 40-day numbers because that's going to be the state and the official numbers, right?
Yeah.
And make it jive with that.
Well,
I mean,
that goes back
isn't
to
that
what
fair?
I'm trying to understand, where this 107 came from. The 107 is based on 0.84% growth, but does not include the impact of charter schools. And it is a 17% budget growth on 0.4% growth in admissions, not including the impact of charter schools. So I understand it's not a 1-for-1. If you have $2,000 coming into the school, there are some costs associated with UCPS that can't go with the student. There's building costs and other things that you just have to keep at UCPS. I understand that. But at some point, it's not a 1-for-1, but there is a break-even point where maybe it's a 50% of that cost should be reduced from UCPS because that student's no longer there. Because if you lose 600 students this year, potentially, that's 600 students that you don't have to educate in UCPS classrooms, correct?
They don't come in one neat package. right? That we don't lose, we don't lose 30 students right there in third grade at school A, so we can go, boom, that's classroom's gone. And we can now shut down a wing and cut off the electricity to that part of the building. So yes, but you can have efficiencies, but also they don't move in a neat package. They move 2 from here, 5 from here, 6 from here. At over 53 schools, you're going to lose students across all of them. And they're not going to just say, up now we've lost 60 in one go. We can cut 2 classrooms.
So what is that number then? If you're talking about a 2,000, and I just use 2,000 as an even number. If it's $2,000 per student that's paid from local funding, what is an efficiency by not having to educate that student? What is a number if you're no longer having to educate, bus, provide lunches, whatever the case may be for that student? What number is a fair number, is realistic for an efficiency gain?
Probably
because right now you're asking for 1-to-1.
Probably the best number would be the capital, the growth, because if you didn't have a increase, like the 600 students do have a effect on the capital needs. Agree? If you didn't have to build another school because of overcrowding or. Right, but still you're having a decrease.
Even if you could lose, when it comes to transportation, you have students who still are going to be in a neighborhood that Poshhouse can still go.
Yeah. If you got 39 kids on the bus and you have 38.
Or 37, I still have to go
Right.
to the bus, I still have to go through the route.
The teacher's still going to teach the class.
Still teaching class at 2 fewer, so, exactly.
But if we are giving you 2,000 or whatever per student more, when they're not there, that would be money that you would have. If we give you money for kids that are not there, that's what we're talking about giving back, right?
Well, and if they're not at the charter school, if we don't have to I mean, we are required to do a 1-to-1. The per pupil allotment for our kids has to go to follow the charter school students. So that's right. If they're not with us, then, and we're not paying the charter school, if they're just gone somewhere, then absolutely.
But my question is you're basing the 107 on a growth of 353.84%, 17% budget growth. And on top of that, as part of that 107, you're asking to be reimbursed dollar for the students that you pay the charter school that no longer attend UCPS, but are part of the 353 potential growth. So if it's not growing by 353, then what's the correct budget number? Because potentially, I mean, I hope I'm explaining this correctly. You're basing the 107 on a 353 population growth.
Correct. From DPI.
From DPI. That does not include the impact of charter schools. So that 353 may not be, it may be 0, it may be up to a negative 600 students in this first year. And as they grow, it could be bigger.
I believe the 354 was including charter schools.
That's right.
The McKibben number was not.
Yeah.
Then you have said that McKibben is very, very accurate, and that's why he's used. McKibben's forecast for this upcoming year was only 466.
But McKibben wasn't including those that, like I said, that are coming out of private schools and home schools. He's talking about ours.
He's not calculating any impact on charter schools.
Right, but some of those are going to come, like I said, not from Union County Public Schools. You're presuming that all of those come from us. And we're saying that's not a presumption that we believe we can take. That DPI has told us that's not a presumption you need to make, because we're going to allot you those teachers, presuming you're going to get them. And we know what we're giving for the charter schools also, because DPI funds them as well.
So what happens if on your ADM numbers you're negative 100 students?
DPI goes on a plus or minus 100, correct,
That's
Dan?
right.
So if we get 454, we get no additional. And if we get 254, more than 253, then we have to give back. So that's the way DPI works. It's a plus or minus 100.
Well, and you say I'm presuming that all of it's going to come from UCPS, but you're also presuming that 0 will come from UCPS, because you're going to get the full growth of the 353 and have nothing from going to charter schools coming from UCPS. And that's not the case.
But I'm not saying that. I'm saying DPI says that 354 is what we're going to get, regardless of what the charter. They've taken those numbers because they've given ADM allotments to charter schools as well. So they've made that. And they may be wrong, but I'm saying these are the calculations that we have.
And that's where I'm trying to understand, because these forecasts are nowhere close. When I look at, and all I have is McKibben to go by. mean, this is the study that you paid for. And he forecasts 466 next year with zero impact to charter schools. And that's 466 students adding to UCPS. Even if I use his numbers and I say, you're going to grow faster than what DPI is saying, there is no way that I can reconcile those numbers to show that you're going to have 466 plus another 1,000 students coming into Union County, because that doesn't tie back to his numbers. It doesn't tie back to DPI. It doesn't tie back to what you're showing. All indications are that some percentage of that 985 students or 86 students are going to be coming from UCPS. And even if I assume 33%, that puts a net growth at 0. And if we're transferring out students and we're gaining efficiencies, I have 2 questions. What efficiency are we gaining that would affect that number? So we're not asking for 2,000 for the student that could attend UCPS, and we're asking for another 2,000 that we're paying the charter schools, which is what you're asking for. But what number of the 2,000 from the original funding is realistic? Is it 1,000? Is it 500? Is it 1,500? What efficiency do you gain because that student's no longer being taught by a teacher in UCPS?
I don't think we'll know till we know where they go and how many go from what location. We can't determine the efficiencies till, I think, as you all said, until we lose kids off of a bus and we can collapse routes, or till we lose out of a classroom and we can collapse classrooms. We won't know till we see where they come. And we need to wait till that information comes to us for this to make those decisions. We based on the planning allotments that come from DPI, which is what we've done. And I think our assumption is that DPI is correct when they have figured that out. And if they're incorrect, then we will, as Dan said, and the board has said, I think, that we will work on a reconciliation of that.
And over time, historically, DPI, I've been getting those numbers for 20 years. And if I recall correctly, I think they were wrong 4 times. 3 of the 4 times they underestimated what we were going to get, and therefore they gave us more money. One time they gave us too much and we had to give money back. So 3 out of 4 times that they were wrong more than that 100 students, they were actually wrong on the low side.
But we've only had 1 charter school at Union County open to this point. This is a little bit of a unique year because not only do we have that, but we have the impact of the Matthews-Mint Hill, which I'm not even including in this calculation.
And the interesting thing about it, because I don't know, we try to get the data from them directly. I don't even think they know how many students they're going to have. So how do you expect us to know?
Response within 24 hours.
And what were those numbers they gave you?
Actually, I think Tahira was on a copy of the email I received.
74% of the 17% is to teachers or to principals or to staff. And when I say staff, it's principals, it's assistant principals, it's teachers, it's coaching supplements. I believe I said that last minute, 74% of the 107 of the increase. Sorry, not the 107 of the increase from last year. So yes, again, I said we don't lose students in nice, neat packages. We don't lose a classroom. That classroom's gone from Newtowns where my kids go. That classroom's gone, so we can just wipe a teacher out, from that classroom. So you don't need them. No, we may lose 3 from there in 3rd grade and 4 from 5th grade, and we still have to pay the teacher. The teacher is still whole. We can't pay for 75% of the teacher or 60% of the teacher. We have to pay for 100% of the teacher, and that's what 74% of the budget involves. You look at utilities. If we lose 10 students at a school, we can't just say, now take off that percentage of the utility bill, because we still have to power the entire school. We're still going to do all the transportation for that entire school. Even if we lose 10 students from that school, we can't say 10 is a percentage of X number, and now we can just cut the budget in that school. It doesn't work in those round, neat packages.
But that's also applicable with growth. It may not impact your cost any further. And I have one other question I'd like to ask. Of the 107 million, you made a statement earlier that said your methodology was take last year's budget and add 5%.
Not on charter schools. That was on utilities.
That's just utilities?
Just utilities, yes, sir.
Okay. Let me tell you why I asked that, because I'd like to know. couple years ago, I took your line item budget, went through it line item by line item. I found $5 million, or about 6% of that budget, was non-reoccurring actions. And my question is, have you pulled, because every year you're going to have non-reoccurring, one-time charges. Have you pulled that out before you did your calculation to come up with your new budget?
I don't know of any non-recurring expenditures in the local current expense budget. Oh, the bonus. They're going to fund it.
We're doing it online. Sorry, students are taking the class, the bookwork online, and then we still have staff that we're paying to do the driving portion. I don't know the exact numbers, Dr.
It
Jones.
saves on the cost of the classwork. If we were able to cut the cost of teachers having to teach classwork.
Did they cut the pay based on cost savings, or
We did not cut that.
so they give us the full amount, but we're able to use that money elsewhere?
We didn't cut the salaries of the teacher. The money remains the same this year from the state as it did last year.
But we saved money by doing it online, right?
Yes, sir, because that reduces the number of teachers having to teach face-to-face. They can actually do the classwork online. Behind the wheel is still with the teacher.
But you're able to use that savings to.
Well, our fleet is pretty old. We have 55 cars, so we were able to purchase 2 additional cars this year.
So it stays in the driver's ed department?
Yes, sir.
You don't move it to,
Yes, sir. He spent it all in driver's ed.
Dan, you think you want to do, are we ready for capital?
Actually, we got a couple more things that were asked. But if you want to move the capital, we can.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Helms.
Sorry, terribly sorry. Some of the questions that were given to us in advance, and I appreciate that, is there were a number of capital requests that appeared maintenance items, and why weren't the maintenance items included in the capital and not operational? There's a $5,000 threshold for capital, and anything under that we use as operational versus capital, such as door hardware, roof maintenance, partition doors replacements, HIDs. Those are purchased in bulk to save money. Obviously, we're not going to run down to Lowe's or Monroe Hardware and buy one door handle when we know that, you know, we can save money buying 2 to 3 if something's coming up, including like HID doors that are low voltage. Is that correct?
We would couple HID.
These and the necessary door handles.
Other low voltage.
Right. Let's see. Number 6 said, in last week's presentation, you said that there were emerging need funds because they were not provided in preventative maintenance. How much have you requested for the preventative maintenance? And do you have a plan? Well, the capital request was not fully funded, and over $10 million were used for roofing. $2 million arose this year alone in emerging needs. That included the chiller at Weddington and the boiler at Monroe?
Range from.
And there were
correct.
Right. I know there was the warehouse at Fairview, different things, et cetera. So there was not flexibility to address those needs when we arose. So, and do we have a preventative maintenance plan? We all know things break. We don't know when our hot water heater is going to go out at home. There's no time stamp on it. So when these emerging needs come up, that's when we need flexibility from the Board of County Commissioners to say, yes, you can just, these are what needs to be funded.
In your budget, you have a request for items from 14, 15?
That haven't been
Why weren't those
funded.
included in last year's budget?
Because we don't know when a chiller is going to go out.
No, these are from 14, 15. They were in the 14, 15 budget.
Well, and then things have to be pushed down the road, pushed down to the next year, because we have a chiller that needs to be replaced in a school, or we have a boiler that needs to be replaced, that these children need heat and air in their schools.
But it was from 14, 15. Those items were not included in the 15, 16 budget. And now they're showing up in the 16, 17 budget. So where were they last year?
Well,
If I can help
Yeah.
Ms. Helms with that. Commissioner Simpson, as Dan has shared with the Board of Education, with the county commissioners, several of those projects run beyond that fiscal year, that June, July. They're not completed till August, September, October, depending if it's a year-round school. We try to complete everything up by that October timeline so that Dan can go back and reconcile. So you're spending the money, the pool of money that we're fortunate to get, and we're very appreciative of it. But we spend that bucket of money. We just go as far as we can go with the list of projects. When that list of projects is completed, then, we're done. So then the next list, it just gets added to that next list. With that, the facilities committee began to look and prioritize all their projects. Typically, we had some flexibility with the 14, prior to the 14, 15. That flexibility was removed, and so those projects were left out there. And so the facilities committee looked and prioritized for the next 8 years. And then they had those projects that were not completed, and so they were rolled into this 16, 17 budget, sir.
But aren't some of those items also included, and you guys were aware of it before we had our budget meeting last year?
No.
If I remember the date of the letter from you, Dr. Hughes, it was dated the night of our meeting or the day of our meeting, but it wasn't included, and we haven't received any requests for those until this budget.
Well,
so I'm just curious why we missed it.
What happened was,
Budget.
it seems like we asked for a line item, a $2 million line item, open-ended, as
This
opposed
isn't those
to.
items, though. These are the items that
Okay.
it came from the letter that I believe your board sent to.
Right. It was like
county.
it was like the one letter was like
One was
900,000, one was like 1.2 million, something like
One was
that.
from 14, 15
Right.
leftover projects, and one was from the
15,
15, 16. I'm sorry, one was.
One was 14,
and one was
15.
For 15, 16.
Mhm.
And the letters were dated the night of our meeting. So we could have put it on the agenda and been able to consider it. But we didn't hear anything, and we haven't heard anything until it goes on the budget this year. So why, I guess, number one, if they're critical, why do they wait a year?
Well, I did present those to you. It wasn't the last time. I did present those to you in December, and we were told to wait until the budget. So
14, 15 items.
yes, sir. Those items were in that packet that I addressed, when I came there that long. So it was in there, and we were told that, coming in the middle of the year, you don't really like that, and to wait for the budget, and that's what we did.
One thing that I find confusing, and the emergent needs was part of it, we keep referring to Weddington's chillers. They've been replaced and paid for. Are you trying to replenish the funds that you used to pay for that? Or is this budget for upcoming
I know.
items that haven't been?
Right. See, we had CCEP year 1, year 2. So we had to push some things back in the CCEP. So that's gone. There's a list, you'll see they have of everything that was completed. You won't see that on the budget request.
So
this is what's remaining.
Mr. Helms, we had to spend CCP year 1 money on that. And then the goal in this year's budget is to say, honestly, and stop me if I'm wrong, Dr. Webb, how can we stay current with our CCP plan, so catch up what we missed, and then ask for, I'll be honest, it is a pool of money to address things as they come up. So it's that emerging needs fund is, you can't tie it to a project right now, because it is when another chiller goes out, we use that pool of money to fix it, and then not touching any of our other budget money that we have assigned for CCP Year 1 projects that got pushed off, and then CCP Year 2, which was always planned for this year.
And I'm just saying the confusing point, you keep referencing activities that's already been paid for out of whatever funds you pulled them out of. And I was asking are you asking us to replenish those funds
No.
that you used, or do we
Yes.
pay for?
What
Yeah,
we're
because
doing
we
is,
didn't use the funds
what
for
happened was.
another project. So that project didn't get completed.
Correct.
Am I answering your question, Mr. Helms?
So here's the thing, because I asked the same thing. We had a list of those 13, 14, 15, 16, and I asked which ones got completed. And Dr. Webb gave me a list of all that's been completed. What was not completed is in our CCEP Year 2, on top of what we didn't get completed in Year 1. So what we did is we had to take money from things that we were trying to do in Year 1 and defer it to Year 2.
yes.
So we're not,
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
and so the question is, we're not asking for you to repay us that money, but to do the project in which we had to take the money from. So I guess that's why it's kind of confusing.
That is correct, Ms. Boyd. And I believe you all, the majority of the county commissioners were present when I presented that to the full Board of Education, those non-negotiable emerging needs that had to be addressed. The Board of Education had to address that. They had approximately the $2.4 million worth of projects that they had the ability to move to address those emerging needs. Well, the projects didn't go away. You just took the money away to deal with those emerging needs that you had that were non-negotiables. And I think you'll probably remember me using that exact term in the presentation.
One thing that we had a lot of disagreements or confusion over is the Benton Heights project. We talked about moving, we were asked several times to move money away from the Benton Heights project and put it to the emerging needs. It was 1.8 million. And then the IP cameras. Platform. Commissioner Helms and I went along with Gary and Mike was gracious enough, and Don took us around, and the principal took us around the school and showed us the needs there. And we saw that the needs were great. Some structural issues, some ADA issues, things like that. And when we saw those issues, the feeling that I had was that, here are these kids in a Title I school. Their parents may not be the loudest voice in the room all the time. I don't want to take money away from them. I don't want to take that money and move it to for example, there was a floors at one of the schools that Commissioner Helms also went to, and there was chips in the floor that needed I can't remember how many thousands of dollars, a couple $100,000, $150,000. And while that is important, again, that whole, when the principal took us in and said, be careful, watch your step, that's a problem. And I hope that y'all didn't take offense that we were trying to micromanage it, because you asked for the money to do that school. And we figured when you asked for it, it must have been important. That was a priority. And we funded it, and then you were asking us to take it away from it and just put it into a pot of money.
No, well, what we were telling you is that we didn't have enough money to complete the project. But the good news is, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a good segue into, right? But you can't build half a house.
No, but you can fill in a floor. You can.
Well, that was part of the CCEP Year 1, is to do work at Benton Heights. That's not part of the.
But you can see. Can you understand where we would be concerned?
And so
when
that
you had a hole in the floor and
emerging
it's not
needs.
fixed.
Okay, that's okay.
I mean, does that, because I know there was a lot of disagreement in this, and there was a lot of comments made in the public about us not doing this for you guys. And this is not again, Gary, you were there with us. The needs were great. And I'm saying the auditorium that needed the most, and that would have been the most expensive place, maybe not so much. I mean, maybe this is an ADA issue and you do need to fix it, but the hole in the floor could have been fixed, and basic maintenance like that. And that's why we're wondering, again, maybe if you'd have fixed that or said, hey, look, we're going to address these safety issues, but we just don't want to do the auditorium right now, we could have understood that. I don't think that would have been a problem, but it's just not understanding why, again, I just felt like those parents in that school didn't have the loudest voice in the room. And I would hope that somebody would speak for my kids if that were.
Well, I did. I came and spoke before you with the entire 13, 14, 15, 16 list for all of those items and the ADA. I asked for them in December, and I was told to wait until May, the budget. So that was 6 months, and that's what we did, and it's everything right here. It's all right here.
And Piedmont, we did the football field at Piedmont, and then there's another request for money for Piedmont?
No, that was to replace the home side state visitors, or
Right.
excuse me, the home side seats. That did not include the visitor side.
Well, I sit in home side when I go to Piedmont.
Well, and that's fine. However, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not, at the time it was built to ADA standards.
That's correct. You're dealing with site improvements there.
Yes,
And
so it's not
obviously
the
you've been
entire
around the
stadium, because
school.
Mr. Helms and I and Mr. Stewart, who isn't here tonight, went out and visited the site with the old concrete stadium seats.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
And so we did the home side only. There was no field improvements. It was just the bleachers and the new concession stand.
But at the time of the request, it was the entire stadium was presented, because I remember very clearly, because like I said, I took time to go out there and
Right.
see what you were concerned about. So our understanding is we were funding with that $1.7 million, replacing the visitor side and the other stadium. So
If you remember during the presentation, when they brought out the blueprints, it was the home side. There was nothing done to the old concession stand. The new concession stand was built. There had to be new handicap parking accessibilities.
they were doing the parking lot as well. I
Right.
remember that.
Yeah, because they had to take out a huge hunk of the parking lot for the new concession stand, but it didn't address anything beyond the state or beyond the home side area.
Ms. Helms is correct. The visitor side was never part of the discussion for the Facilities Committee or the Board of Education.
I just wanted to speak to Mr. Rushing's comments regarding the, yes, I do. And regarding the Benton Heights and the projects. And I agree that, there are priorities throughout our school system where we need to fund it, to fund projects. And I don't think that we don't, here as a board, a particular parent at a particular school, think we look at all our schools and figure out what do we need to do? What's the priority? Where can we put funds that where we can complete a job? I think kind of you're talking about doing in phases. Is it possible? Sure. Is it maybe more expensive to do things in phases? I know when anytime you're in construction, you could be at a point where it's just more beneficial, more economical to do the whole project at once. So I think as a board, we're looking to figure out where is it best to spend our money to work on a high priority project, and said everything seems like a priority, and where can we complete that project? So I can understand, from your point of view. Our point of view is, we're looking to figure out how can we do things in the most efficient manner.
Because if you would have come to the board and with this request, and I would say this might be something for the future to look at, is if you had that $1.8 million approved for that school, and you would have come to the Board of County Commissioners and said, Board of County Commissioners, we have fixed the bathroom doors where the children in wheelchairs can get into the bathroom. We have fixed the hole in the floor. But at this time, we cannot complete the auditorium renovations because of funding constraints and needs in other schools. I think I would have understood that better than take everything away from the school and we'll address it later on. Because that goes back to Commissioner Lance Simpson's point. These things are priorities, and we hear the priorities and we say, yes, that's a priority, and we vote to, we may vote to increase taxes, or we may vote to cut funding from the county and put it to the schools. And if we're making those decisions, those hard choices that we have to make, we want to make sure that that project is getting done, because it is something maybe that's important to us. We do hear from parents about these issues, and we do hear that Sun Valley. I mean, towards Sun Valley, we see the football field at Sun Valley. We see the buildings at Sun Valley with the open pipes and the ventilation that you can see. We see all that. We see a need. Do I see a $102 million need? No, but I do see probably a $25 million need. But again, that's just, we're engaged as you are, but you know more about it than we do because you see it more. And that's why we depend on you for these things. And when we get I know that there's been a lot of back and forth over the years, and there's a lot of hard feelings. I wasn't here during the lawsuit. Commissioner Lance Sepson wasn't here during the lawsuit. Some of the other, your board members weren't here during the lawsuit. You know, Christine, I miss being able to talk to you like we talked before I got on the Board of County Commissioners. We had good conversations at our range and other places. And that's what, you know, that's what hopefully this will do, is get us back into communications. Don't think that because we say no to something, it's a game. And that was said several times. It's not a game. I take it very seriously. We wouldn't have gone out there and toured those schools. We want to understand why a priority changes so much. If it's a good priority, I understand that something else may emergency come up, but chips in the floor is not bigger than a hole in the floor to me. And that's where we get confused. And maybe, again, addressing those major problems with the money already approved would have been better, and then come to us and say, hey, look, we've got the major stuff out of the way, but this auditorium can wait. That makes sense?
Yeah, ready to move on? Yep, okay. There's 3.1 million allocated or assigned to the fund balance to replace teachers' laptops. We also do this in bulk purchases to keep costs low. Everyone's on a 5-year rotation. I think we've already discussed that. And this doesn't always go to the teachers. This also goes to administration in the schools, SROs in the schools, any adult serving children in the schools. And that's approximately 3,000 devices. We do self-maintain in-house, but as Mr. Helms is, I know, a big IT guy, that after a few years, parts become very obsolete, and they do it very quickly. So we maintain for as long as we can, but we're at that 5-year threshold. So therefore, we're going to have to replace laptops for our staff. Another question that was asked, do we prioritize annually? And this also goes back to the CCEP. We work with our site-based teams at each school. Site-based teams include teachers, the principals, parents, and community members that may not even have children at the school. And they discuss what is a want and a need. And we determine, you know, this is definitely a need at the school. They have to have X, Y, and Z, you know, plants around, you know, this little area. That's a want. They also work with our administration and divisions for multiple year plans for each site base, and to help so that we can help show what is need and what's a want for the county. We do reprioritize every year due to emergency needs. Safety of our students and our staff is priority number one. ADA requirements are always a priority. In 2015, I believe it was, September, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Webb, OCR, the Office of
Civil Rights.
Civil Rights, thank you, came in and looked at several high schools. And when they do that, the recommendations that they are giving us to make ADA requirements go through 53 schools, not just those specific schools.
That is correct. The Office of Civil Rights comes in through the Career and Technical Education Program, CTE, so which is predominantly, well, it's the largest program at the high school level. So they come in, they don't visit all the schools, but when they do their visit, they are looking for ADA type issues, program things to provide. They pick about every 6-7 years. We are in that rotation because it's a large school, a medium-sized school, and a small school every year that they visit. So we get it about every 6 or 7 years. This year when they came through, they identified several projects. We worked with them. We had to present a plan back to them that they finally approved. That was a 3-year plan. Year one, and please don't hold me to exact figures, was a little north of $200,000. Year two was around 270 some thousand, and year three was approximately that same value. But that was not every school. Coupled with that, the facilities committee realizes that in their planning, their long-term planning, that they have to and want to address ADA issues. And we talk about having an ADA plan is not having one that's gaining dust on a shelf. It's embedded in their CCEP over the 8 years.
And if we do not move on ADA projects, we can lose federal funding. Is that correct?
That's correct. If we must address the OCR report, those 3 years, or they can come in and attack the federal dollars. For us, that's CTE funding, that's our exceptional children funding. We could go on there. But again, that came after the budget had been submitted. The report, we didn't get it until September. And therefore, that became an emerging need. We don't have an option. We have to do those projects this year. You will see year 2 in the CCEP or this year's budget request. And year 3, you will see next year, I'm sure, as they work through, the board works through their budget process.
So what's the total value for the ADA renovations for all years?
Right, Mr. Simpson, I don't have that number off the top of my head. What I will tell you is that we are having to do a review of all of our ADA. We worked with Ms. Julia Sane out of Charlotte, Mecklenburg. Matter of fact, Gaston County was in the last meeting with us to see how we do that. Then we have to present a plan back on how we're going to address ADA, even additions beyond what we've identified. They train our staff to continue to look at ADA issues and concerns at all of our properties in school. And I will tell you, in the conversation, it is not, if it, you know, we don't have the ability to create the money, that's not their concern. They will tell you it is your responsibility to fix the issues.
But why has it taken 25 years? Is my question as well. ADA was passed 25 years ago, and we're still dealing with ADA issues. Over the course of the last 25 years, that's why I asked what the value is of these projects. Surely over the course of 25 years, there's been enough capital allocated to at least take care of those if that was a priority.
I can't speak to the 25 years. I've only done this job since 2008. What I can speak to about is that when a building is built, it meets ADA code. When there's shifts and changes in those codes, you're responsible now to come up and meet those. And that's what's happened. There was a change, oh gosh, Don, was it 2000 and yeah. So now we're held, or if you do an X amount of repairs or change to a building, then you've got to bring that facility up to the current code as well. So there's a lot of things that come into play with that. It's not what was done 25 years. You will deal with ADA issues at the next change as well. Whenever that's reevaluated and changed, you'll have to deal with that. That's why the Facilities Committee and the Board of Education takes it very, very serious to make sure that they are working continuously on ADA projects. And you see those year 1, 2, and 3. We worked with Ms. Sain. She's comfortable with that being our ADA plan. And then you will see additional ADA placed in those years as well, but heavily in years 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 as well.
So as a priority, why isn't some of the fund balance that's left over at year end being used for these ADA upgrades?
Which fund balance? The 3.6, there's 3.6,
Well,
3.1,
just
right?
like cost savings from some of the projects that we have, why can't some of this be used? Why can't some of the scopes be changed so that ADA is a priority? And that's, you know, that's one of my concerns in here when I look at the priority list. To me, year 1 in your CCEP should be nothing but ADA. That should be everything that's in year 1. Not spread out through multiple years. If it came out in 2010, then we knew what the obligations were then and what had changed. Granted, they've done some inspections since then, but it would seem that it's a priority issue. We've spent money on certain things and not others. And why isn't ADA at the top of the list for all of this?
I don't want to speak for the Facilities Committee, but I guess because you've got some new members that's only been here, it has been a priority for them. They have had to manage and work with funding, and you will have seen ADA requests that goes back even to when Dr. Clark was doing this position years ago. It comes down to the funding And what we had worked out with, again, Ms. Sain, who oversees this region, was that the year 1, year 2, year 3 would meet those ADA, I don't like to use the word obligations because they are needs. And that's planning. They understand, meaning that we don't have an unlimited source of funds, that we have to work within a budget. It is, are you making a good faith effort? In Union County Public Schools, the Board of Education, you've made and are making and will continue to make a good faith effort. And I know that you as the Board of County Commissioners support that as well.
But that's why I would ask is for the capital request, are there any items that can take a lower priority or should take a lower priority than ADA? And we go back to Benton Heights, we've allocated the 1.9 million, and I understand you have an issue with the auditorium, but is it possible that maybe the auditorium is not part of that? And instead of asking for, because I think you've got it in both sides of your budget this year, maybe part of that can be ADA. That's why I asked, what is the total amount of renovations needed to bring them up to compliance?
No idea what the total amount is.
We won't have that total amount until we finish the process with Ms. Sain, and we're anticipated having that final report when, Don?
It'll probably take another 4 or 5 months to get the system-wide assessment done. We've already analyzed. She's prioritized. Now, my department, we're looking and setting a plan over multiple years. It's too encompassing to do it in 1 year. You can't, we would be doing something everywhere all the time. You have to chunk away at it. You can't do it all at once. You have other priorities that are just as important as an ADA issue. So you spread everything out over multiple years and chunk on it. That's the best way to get it. I've been doing this for 40 years, and until I'm an architect emeritus, I will be doing the ADA stuff. It's a long process. ADA's been around since the mid-70s, and no one will ever get it done. It's just too much.
It does change, but it seems like some of these buildings, these ADA issues have been around for a while.
Yes.
And if it was a priority, I'm just trying to understand why they weren't done sooner, or at least listed as a request sooner.
We've had ADA projects in every budget for the last several years.
Another question that was asked was there any duplications? And no, there's not any duplications that that I'm aware of on the AD upgrades and new partitions, et cetera. Another question y'all asked was for the capital request for expansions or addition to facilities. No, that's why we put the bond on place. If you look at the package that we sent to you, all of them, including some of our older schools, have addition requests for that. So none of that is on the capital. Wire costs and scopes not refined annually. It's not recommended by purchasing unless funds are available. We don't want to have roofers come out all the time and get bids and prices on things if we don't have funds for it. How old are the estimations? Depending on what was funded and what wasn't funded on how the estimations are. If we have a roof that needed to be replaced 5 years ago, well, obviously that bid's going to be older and our costs are going to probably go up. It says, your list appears to be static and you just roll from year to year, adding from priority list. Why is this not actively managed and refined annually to reprioritize? It is, we can't reprioritize because if we're not granted the block funding, we do safety procedures first and foremost for our students, and then we maintain the building as well. So it is reprioritized all the time by staff and the facilities committee and then the full board. Let's see, we've answered questions about the high school stadium. Specifically, will the purchase for $300,000 for furniture. Yes, we will replace and purchase new furniture to get the obsolete out. Let's see what else. Dan's already addressed a lot of this. And the ADAs and
The 1.6 million in technology upgrades, is that where you're at?
yes, on number 4. Yeah, we've talked about technology upgrades and infrastructures.
Correct. The $1.6 million, Chairman Rushing, goes towards your servers, your infrastructure. I know that one of the subset questions there was, can you use E-rate to help offset some of that funding? And absolutely, we utilize E-rate to the best of our ability. The rules and regs to E-rate have changed. We used to pay 10 cents on the dollar, but we were limited to certain schools with a high percentage of poverty. Now they look at the system as a whole. So we're able to spread those resources, E-rate resources out. However, it's now 40 cents to the dollar. So, but it's buying, it's not Chromebooks. It's not something that's not capitalizable. You're looking at access points. You're looking at servers and data closets. You're looking whether that's something, whether it's in a school or in the core here in the tech center.
Another question off the list here. If in all this process in coming years, we have a replacement of, let's say, an elementary school or middle school or high school or whatever. I'm not going to name a school because I don't want 100 phone calls tomorrow saying don't shut down my school. But any school that we would see the need, that the cost would be more than possibly the benefit would be to build a new school. Could that school, and would you support that school being leased to a charter school to benefit the taxpayers? And do you feel like it would be a benefit to the taxpayers?
Do we get to keep the rent?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, this happened years ago with Walter Bickett.
Okay.
Walter Bickett.
I think we have an obligation to, if we determine it to be surplus, to let charter schools have an opportunity.
And I may understand that we have the ability to determine that if you don't, right? The Board of County Commissioners can determine that. So let's say that you didn't have any other use for it, any other legitimate use for it, that the Board of County Commissioners could actually, by vote, lease that to a charter school.
If it's decommissioned, then the school system decommissions it, then it does revert back to the county commissioners.
Isn't that what happened with the Union Academy campus?
Shiloh,
Yeah,
the
the old
elementary
Shiloh building.
campus.
That the county commissioners sold that to?
It was surplus.
They gave
Yeah,
it
on
to
Old
the-
Monroe Road.
yeah, That's
Yeah.
correct. So we have experience in
Papers.
going through that process with the old Shiloh Elementary, which is the elementary level for Union Academy.
Because they have some abilities that we don't. I mean, they have some abilities to ADA issues, things like that we don't, right?
That is correct.
Go back to your comment on the E-rate. Is that 1.6 million in technology, is that the total value of the upgrades?
$1.6 million. In that $1.6 million request, there is embedded in there, we are eligible, I think we're granted approximately $1.3 million. So our 40% is in that 1.6 for that, Commissioner Simpson.
But you're requesting 1.6.
Yeah, the other is made up and you have a list of what that hardware is and provided. That was provided to you by Mr. Krupinski in the budget process. You have a list of all that equipment.
Okay.
Okay.
Have any
Do you
questions?
have anything you'd like?
I just, this may have been answered in the last meeting. I know there was a good bit of talk about losing teachers to Rock Hill, South Carolina, and Mecklenburg County. Do you have some statistics on your teacher turnover in terms of the percentage of the total population or total staff excluding retirements?
It's about 16% is our teacher turnover rate. I don't know where if they go to other districts, I don't know what districts they go to. It's about 16%, which is the highest again since I've been here.
And that was a a follow-up. Did you do an exit interview to see if they, in fact, were going to another school system or maybe just leaving the teaching profession or whatever?
That is on the resignation form. They put down if they're going to be teaching another LEA or another state. So I can go back and find that particular number at not a specific district in the state or a specific district in another state.
How does that turnover compare to other LEAs?
It's fairly comparable. We're a little higher than the state this past year, if I remember correctly. But we've been as low as around 10% or a little above 10%. It has gone up.
When were we as low as 10%?
Sorry?
When were we as low as 10%?
That's about
Right.
Around 10% was probably 8 years ago, right before the economic downfall.
But we're comparable now as a county?
To other
LEAs?
Other LEAs, yes. Some are higher, some have a little lower, and it changes every year, obviously, for each one of us.
Right.
That teacher turnover, is that truly a teacher leaving the school district to go to another school district?
No, it could be, I'm leaving to retire.
Okay,
Or
but
if I'm
could it be
leaving
a
to-
teacher going into an administration role?
No,
So that number does not capture that.
no, it does not. Now, if they go in another administration role in another district, yes, it does. But if it's in our district, no, it does not.
I know it's getting late, and I had one more question, and I don't know how to ask this in a polite way, and you can't even answer it. I mean, this may be something that you can't answer because of ongoing investigations or anything else happening. It seems like, we see in the newspaper, see on the news that there's money bleeding out of the system. Are y'all accounting for that in the budget? I think there was several $100,000 in the bus program. There was, the retirement, and there may be, is there anything else that we need to be waiting for with the retirement? Is there any other issues there or costs coming with that? And again, I understand if you can't answer that question. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but it's something that's on people's minds and.
Well,
and they're asking us.
I will answer this. Hopefully it's okay. There's no bleeding of money, no missing of money. And I'll say that and that's all I can, that's all I can say in terms of the bus. And
But is it in the budget to like the bus money that we didn't get? And is that accurate to say we didn't get all the bus money we have been getting? Or is that accurate?
we at this point, we don't need to ask for anything because I don't know how to say it.
We make do with the transportation dollars that we have. So what we get is what we spend on transportation.
Do you need any local money to go into transportation? Or can it go into transportation?
Mr. Baston, I don't know that we can answer that right now. I don't think we know yet what our money's going to be to even know to tell you that.
We're waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
That's all we can say. And in terms of the retirement, we're not asking you for anything right now.
Where are those funds coming from?
We had a closed session on it.
The $512,000?
It's not coming from anywhere.
We haven't asked anybody for anything yet.
It's being paid out of your retirement fund, correct? That's my understanding. And I think that was the news report that I
That
saw.
was the news report. That's false.
Okay. Are there any more pension spikings coming?
I mean, there's always the possibility when you have someone who teaches for a lot of years, then moves up in administration.
Specifically the ones that are part of this. I understand it's from a large increase within 4 years of their retirement because that's how it's calculated. Specifically related to the 512, are there any other individuals that are retiring that's going to spike?
It's not a large increase in the last 4 years. It is whether you have paid throughout your entire career to match your 4-year highest salary benefit rate. So it's not a large increase in the last 4 years. That's a misunderstanding. So there is always the possibility when folks retire, we have to wait and see what the state does the calculations.
Are you expecting any similar ones
I think that's certainly a possibility.
of the same magnitude?
I have no idea till the state does the calculations. I wouldn't expect so, but I have no idea.
So where will that money come from?
When the money, we'll have to figure that out once, but like, I think Mr. Sides has said, there's no request before you at this time.
Well, I understand, but can state or federal funds be used to fund that? So it would have to come from local funds.
Potentially, yes.
So in all likelihood, it will be in the budget request next year or somewhere in the savings this year.
Until I have more information, that's not before you tonight. It's not in the budget.
Anything else? We good?
Any other questions for any board members? I don't think it would be totally inappropriate if any of your staff or any of our staff maybe have one question or something that they've heard tonight, want a clarification.
I don't have any questions. No,
Good.
sir.
You
I
know,
don't.
Michelle, you have any questions for us? Dan or?
We're all talked out. I think we're all good. We're all talked out.
Yeah. I feel like I got a lot out of tonight. I got a lot of questions answered that I think it's better for us to answer them like this than try to figure them out on our own. It's better to hear them from you. I hope that you heard the questions that we asked were helpful to you.
Well, I certainly want to thank you for coming over tonight, and I look forward to getting your recommended budget. Anything? Okay, well, I've motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, Board of Education adjourns.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay.
Motion Board of County Commissioner. Aye. I understand. That's why.